Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Fantasy Fullback Dive, brought to you by the good people at the Roto Street Journal, acting as your lead blocker to fantasy glory, paving your way to fantasy excellence, making all your football-related fantasies come true. I'm your host, Nat the Truth Jones. With me, as always, the Wolf of Roto Street himself. And with me, more and more frequently, we got Mo in the house as well, coming back for the second week in a row. Had a great show last week and had another good one not too long before that. And we're hitting sleepers today, folks. This is the thing that everybody gets really excited about. Wolf saying that the clips from last year did really well. You know, anybody can say who the top 5 guys are. You know, anybody, at least potentially, can say who should you avoid. But can you name the guys no one's even talking about? We're going to see if we can do that today. Anything to add to that intro, Wolf? We got 8 guys we're going to be going over, and maybe 1 or 2 other ones I might try to slide into.
No, I think it's great. It's really the kind of fantasy glory lies. And yeah, we talked about on the bus show that you don't get as much credit. It's kind of like the offensive line. You know, everyone will call you out if you miss your busts, but no one will remember when you nail them. That's the opposite with sleepers. When you hit these ones out of the park, everyone loves you forever. And last year, I'll toot my own horn just a little bit. I don't love to do that, but I hit Kyren Williams and Tank Dell on this show last year. We just knocked our sleepers out of the park. Who knows? I really felt so convicted in those guys, and I really do like the guys I have here tonight. I don't know that – there's actually a couple. You know, I was going to say I don't feel quite as good, but, man, I've got a few of these that I do have the investment in best ball, and I actually do really love as well. So I've got some great names I'm feeling great about. Again, we gave you guys the league winners last year. And if the only other thing I would plug, if you like these 8 that you give, well, I got 30 more for you in the draft guide. That is just $10 at rotostreetjournal.com/draft guide. It's the really only thing we charge for. So if you want to get some questions, how can I support you? Go get yourself the draft guide. It's going to win your league. Support yourself. Support your boys, a small fantasy brand, special ed teacher chasing the dream. You know, we would love to have your support. If that's too much, just a free thumbs up. Any likes and shares are also a good free way to support this as we start to dive on in to our sleepers. Let's do it.
All right. No, Wolf, before we get started, I do want to ask you one question, and I want to ask Mo the same thing. If you can do it off the top of your head, you mentioned Williams, you mentioned Dell. Would you say that's the best quote unquote sleeper you've ever nailed, or is there another one that stands out in your illustrious career?
I mean, off the top of my head, those were 2 of the best. You remember though, when we started this in 2018, Pat Mahomes was the guy that we said have to take, no matter how good your quarterback 1 is. Take this guy, sit him on your bench, and just see what happens. And first game he comes out, puts up like 30 fantasy points, goes on to throw 5K and 40 like that. It's tough to top that one. I don't know. We've got a good track record with our sleepers, Truth.
That one has aged extremely well. Mo, can you think of one that you've just absolutely nailed that you're just so proud of that you would bring it up on a talk show or a podcast?
I was on Mahomes that year as well. I had him in the home league, and then last year, I believe I brought Nico Collins to the show. I haven't gone back and watched the clips from last year, but that was a huge smash last year. Wide receiver 12 overall, wide receiver 7 per game, and I'm all over him again this year. But you just have to take him like 9 rounds earlier this year as opposed to where you were getting him last year, which is rather unfortunate, but it is what it is. But I'm excited to dish out some good names again this year. I mean, when you can hit even like 300 on these sleepers, I mean, you're like in the range that we're going to be talking about, like it's a massive win to just be hitting it here and there. I mean, in the rate that we hit last year, I mean, it's a big pat on the back to ourselves, and don't want to be victory lapping too hard here. But I mean, when you're giving out names like Nico Collins, Tank Dell, and Kyren Williams, I mean, it's a successful path, and I hope we can keep it up here this year.
Yeah, your Collins pick on the show actually a little bit has shaped my auction strategy this year, which I won't get into too much, but I do remember you making that pick, and it made quite an impression on me. I told Mo off air last week that my best one ever, I picked Michael Vick with the last pick in the drafts when he was backing up Kevin Cobb. And then Kevin Cobb got hurt, and then it was off to the races. So that's the one I'm hanging my hat on.
Konami code, like OG there, Truth. I remember that year. Is that the Eagles year where he just was absolutely league winner to the max?
It was so fun to watch. It really was.
Yeah, just to define it before we get into the specific names, too, last little like housekeeping before we get in there and last victory lapping. We're defining these guys as people going after pick 120. I see these sleeper articles, and they're like, Chase Brown. And the dude's going at pick 80, 90 right now. And, of course, I love him. I think he's going to be a great breakout. awesome pick. But I really think of sleeper as anybody after 120. And we specifically challenged ourselves, like, give at least one guy in the 120s, but then also somebody going after the 170s as well to get a little bit deeper for you guys in 16-team leagues, 200 plus draft picks going on. So we're really trying to dig deep. Some of the names will be slightly more quote unquote obvious guys that are going to get drafted in every draft, but still go after pick 120 or so. But then we're also trying to dig real deep into those guys that truly just blow up and might be on your waiver wires as we speak.
All right, let's get into it. Let's start with quarterbacks. Which one of you guys wants to go first? Wolf, you want to kick it off?
I'll give it a Mo with the Trevor Lawrence call, because, again, guy that's probably going to get drafted in every league, but still going right now, right around 120, 130. I think it's a phenomenal call and someone I've certainly been gravitating towards throughout this preseason, and Mo's been on him all offseason. So I'll let you kick us off, Mo, with Trevor Lawrence.
Convince me.
Yeah. It's he's going in the 130s right now, and it's come up a little bit. I mean, there were points in the offseason these last couple of weeks you could get him as low as 150 in these home league drafts. So people are just not wanting to buy into Trevor Lawrence this year. But for me, he's the perfect like punt QB. Like, you don't get any of those guys in the top 10, so you might as well just wait until the middle to late rounds and you grab Trevor Lawrence here. And I just don't know why people are waiting to draft him until the QB 16. I mean, he's coming off a season where he was the QB 13 overall and the QB 13 in points per game. And it was just kind of a disastrous season, like just kind of marked by what ifs and like just overall inconsistencies and a bunch of question marks on what could have been in terms of his overall performance. I mean, there's just a couple of key points here. First, we just have a string of near miss touchdowns. There was that highlight reel, that compilation that was circling around Twitter about a month ago. If you missed it, go check it out. I believe Ian Hartitz posted it on Twitter, so you can go check that out. But it's just a compilation of a minute and a half straight of just drop touchdowns and near miss touchdowns for Trevor Lawrence. And it was just a bunch of big plays and fantasy scoring opportunities that he missed out on last year. And that another stat that kind of made its rounds around the fantasy community accompanying that video was the fact that Trevor Lawrence led all QBs in EPA loss to drop passes last year. And then the other part of like the big question marks and what ifs is surrounding Trevor Lawrence's health. He dealt with a slew of injuries. Him and Derek Carr were two of the most banged up quarterbacks last year. Just in a span of like 2 months, Trevor Lawrence dealt with a knee bruise, a high ankle sprain, an AC joint sprain, and a concussion. So if he was healthy last year, I mean, who knows what he could have done. And even while he was unhealthy, down the stretch last season, he still showed that he was able to be a top-tier QB. Over a 2-month sample size, so pretty lengthy, a full 8 weeks, Trevor Lawrence was performing at a high level. He was averaging over 20 points per game and was the QB5 from week 11 until the end of the season. So he's shown in stretches that he can be a top-tier quarterback. And I just want to be betting on a guy who I think has quality weapons, who has been such a high-end talent, just hasn't put it together yet. I mean, he hasn't thrown for more than 25 touchdown passes in a season yet. And I think we can all agree that he has the weapons and is of the talent level that can reach the 30 touchdown threshold quite easily. I mean, we're talking a guy that you're about to talk about, Geno Smith, has thrown for 30 touchdowns in his career. And I think Trevor Lawrence is far more talented than Geno Smith. And then just one little extra point here. Trevor Lawrence was just 10 points away from being the QB9 last year. I mean, two of those touchdowns that I referenced earlier that ended up getting dropped, if those go his way, he's basically the QB9 last year. And I think we would be talking about him in a lot different light, in a much more positive manner. So this guy hasn't really put it all together, and he's sliding down draft boards because people are ready to give up on him. I'm not ready to give up on a prospect of this caliber. I think this offense is going to be strong all around, and I think that he can be picked up as a mid-tier backup, but can legitimately make a push to be a top 10 guy.
Yeah, a couple things I found interesting thinking about this particular pick. First of all, I'm surprised he's never thrown 25 touchdowns in a season. I mean, that doesn't even seem right to me, but I'm assuming you've done your research, and it is. You're right. We certainly all agree he's got a lot more upside than that. Another thing, and you can correct me if I'm wrong on this, I feel like despite the fact that he did really well closing the year out, didn't he lose Christian Kirk for like that whole stretch?
Yeah.
I feel like they didn't even have him on the field, and I considered him their best receiver.
Christian Kirk went down week 13 with I think it was a fully torn groin.
Yeah.
So he was, for that, his best stretch, Kirk was out for 5 of those games. So, one of his better targets and just more reliable guys. and he was still putting up QB1 numbers. So, and it's not like I don't like to lean on the small sample sizes, but that was a full 2 months where he was performing at a high level. So pretty interesting to me.
Yeah, I really like the call. I mean, this was a guy that was going round 6, round 7 last year routinely. Everyone kind of had him pegged for that breakout, and maybe it did hit some hiccups for good reason here with the injuries, with all the drops and misplays. But I still think we saw those glimpses of the guy that we were trying to buy in round 6 or 7 last year. We get it for a full season. Doug Peters, such a pass-happy attack will consistently be towards the top 10 in pass rate over expectation. You add Brian Thomas, a 17-touchdown score, very sure-handed on those deep routes. I think a lot of those end up getting converted this year for him. He's certainly somebody. I mean, you saw the preseason game. You never want to overreact to those stats, but 8 for 10, 90 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 2 drives, just mid-season form, driving right down the field, a 9-yard rush, too. Sneaky Konami upside to Trevor Lawrence as well. I'm a big fan. I think this is a great call. I think we were a year too early on the breakout, and now people are going to be a year too late, and he's going to really prove to be a good one. So I love that call, Mo.
Good job. We got another one coming up. We're gonna bounce back to you, Wolf, right?
Yeah, I'll toss up.
And this one, I told the Wolf and Mo before we started, hey, I actually got a few of my own I want to throw out. And then the first name that came up, the Wolf put up, was the guy where I was like, oh, this is where I'm really going to earn my stripes with these guys. They're going to think I'm so smart. And he already was doing it. So anyway, I'll just be a spoiler right here and say I agree with this one. But go ahead.
Yeah. I mean, it's pretty crazy. We're talking about a guy in Geno Smith was the quarterback 6 2 seasons ago. That shouldn't be a sleeper unless he just completely fell off the face of the earth. And I know he took a step backwards, quarterback 17 last year, but that's still 7 spots ahead of his quarterback 24 ADP, going largely undrafted, 177 ADP right now. And I think he's going to push for the top 12 yet again, just like a couple seasons ago. Why do I expect a bounce back? I love this new fantasy ecosystem, this Ryan Grubb attack. I've talked about it multiple times, but coming over from Washington, one of the most explosive college offenses we've seen in a long time, top 10 in pass rate over expectation, aerial attack with 3 weapons going in the top 3 rounds of the real NFL draft here. And just look at those weapons, and it's just a seamless fit. You're going to get a lot of motion, deep posts, and vertical routes, mixing it around, going aggressively on 4th down. You got DK Metcalf playing the Adunze role, JSN playing McMillan, Lockett in the poke role. That's one of the best 3 wide receiver casts we've ever seen. And potentially, there's an upside if JSN hits his profile. I shouldn't say that we've ever seen. It really could be, though. It is the way this prospect was lauded last year for good reason. And I think it was a lot more Shane Waldron misusing these 3 rather than deficiencies in those 3's talents. We'll find out. But I do think Grubb is going to put them in a much better spot to succeed. And so far, it sounds like Geno, you read any type of puff piece out there, and I think this hype is very real. He's on a hot streak to start camp. He said Grubb called him an awesome fit. There's a really good marriage there with the skill set that Geno has and what we ask our quarterbacks to do. He's also athletic. And we look at it, what do they want to do? Throw it deep. Geno, 2 years ago, the number 1 deep passer in the NFL and PFF deep passing grades. Last year, number 6 in deep passing grade 2. Ultimately, he threw 15 touchdowns, was number 1 on just the 10th most attempts as a deep passer 2 seasons ago. And this offense is definitely going to be slinging it deep. We saw that in the preseason, multiple completions over 20 yards in his only drive in this offense, went 4 for 5, hit DK for a nice 20-yard touchdown. Looked awesome. But again, some of those puppies, just to read a few of these quotes to get you guys a little tingly downstairs. Okay. Smith spun it on Saturday, demonstrating lightning quick release, elite accuracy, dropping deep balls into the hands of receivers, continues to shine, demonstrate excellent command, orchestrating Grubb's offense. Another outstanding practice, launching the ball downfield with great success. And then again, with Grubb emphasizing multiple times this offseason the athleticism of Geno. And Geno himself came out and said, really midway through the season, I felt I could have used my legs a little bit more. He only had 155 rushing yards on 37 carries. The year before that, though, 366 yards on 68 attempts. And I know that's not like the Lamar Jackson levels of Konami upside, but that's a good 366 yards and 36 fantasy points right there. So if we add another 400-ish yards, 3 to 4 rushing touchdowns to an improved passing attack, I really think Geno is going to push for a top 12 quarterback season, and he's going largely undrafted right now. I'm just so excited for any piece of this offense. And I think Geno's the cheapest way to get, if you don't want to deal with the 3 wide receiver rotation and which one's going to blow up, just take the guy throwing to all of them. I'm a really big fan of Geno this year.
I agree with the pick, like I said earlier, and your logic is pretty much the same place I was coming from. Just like look at the weapons cabinet, look at his track record. I mean, is there a guy that you would have predicted less, say like 3 years ago, to even be in a conversation about a starting job in the NFL? Much less like, hey, pick this guy up, he could be winning leagues. I mean, he was a walking joke, man.
I know. I love that. Like, I mean, I know David Kaplan has a lot of credit for revitalizing him, and we saw him do it with Baker. Maybe Bryce Young. It talks about like some other names as sleepers. Maybe Bryce Young's the next one. But I'm pumped to see it for Geno. Like he's always been a hard worker, like class act. To see him turn it around like this. That is another good point, though. What's interesting is this is his contract year, essentially. Like they have a good out at the end of this season. So if he doesn't ball out, it's probably his last rodeo here. So adding that little extra motivation for him to truly go nuts. I don't love the offensive line. I guess that's one of my biggest concerns, but in an offense that, yes, they'll get it deep, but they also get people in quick hit situations to help set up those deep balls. I think he's going to be just fine. I'm a really big fan of him. I know. I know that was yours, Truth. And we can move on to running backs in a sec. Yeah. I guess the only other quarterback, and again, I don't want to give away all the sleepers. They're in the guide, $10, but I do love Will Levis this year. He's my second highest drafted quarterback. We've talked at length. I'm not going to go for the full spiel like I did with Geno here, but I really just think the marriage of his deep arm, which we're seeing a lot more command of in this preseason with Brian Callahan's scheme, they're just making it so much easier for him. This is no longer Mike Vrabel's run-obsessed attack. I'm a big fan of what we're seeing so far from Will Levis this preseason, what we're seeing from Brian Callahan. We haven't even had Calvin Ridley and DeAndre Hopkins on the field yet together. I think it's going to be a phenomenal aerial show. And I actually meant to make that point with the Jags, too, with Trevor Lawrence. I just love that division. I mean, I see a lot of bad defenses and pretty explosive offenses. I think we're going to get a ton of shootout back-and-forth games in that AFC South this year. So I'm really looking forward to those two.
One other guy that I will not go in depth on or anything like that, because you know how out I was on this guy 2 years ago. Then randomly I ended up with him on my team somehow. And I was just waiting for him to leave in a body bag every single week. And he didn't. But Tua's going like around 165 or something in these drafts. I mean, you talked about the receivers that Geno's throwing to. Tua's throwing to some pretty good receivers as well. Couple guys out of the backfield that can really burn too. I don't know. I don't hate it.
Yeah, his price is closer to the hundreds, I would say. True.
Oh, really? It
does depend on your site, though. Yeah, like it really does. There are some sites where he is going the 160s, and that's just a good general reminder. Like his composite ADP on Fantasy Pros is 110-ish. Like Yahoo, he might be going real high. ESPN, I forget which one, but you're right. He is going way too low on some sites. So certainly, yeah, the weapons are there for him to make a splash.
Kristen just threw us a super chat. Is that what we call them? Are they super chats?
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you so much, Kristen, for the support here with the super chat. She regularly does this in season. You're always a steady fan. We really greatly appreciate your support, Kristen.
All right. So it says 12-team keeper, full PPR league. Which two would you keep? Breece Hall, Devontae Adams, Isaiah Pacheco. Wow.
I'm assuming there's no penalty here, Kristen. If there is, let us know. Because to me, if it's just you keep the top two players there, to me it is Breece Hall and Adams. Pacheco's really close, but in a full PPR, that gap does get wider. Me and Mo on Monday, if you want any Devontae Adams loves, I think we ended up talking about him for like 30 minutes of our draft on Monday. So if you want to hear some Devontae Adams, why we think he's significantly undervalued right now, go for it. And check that out. But Breece Hall is the clear cut. Like you can't even debate it. You're keeping Breece Hall. He's a top, 3-4 overall pick there. You could potentially consider Adams versus Pacheco. But if we end up doing news tonight, we might do that on another show tomorrow. Samaje Perine just landed there, and that really could eat into that receiving upside for Isaiah Pacheco. So in a half PPR, it might be a little tougher, but I still think I'd go Adams and Breece Hall, and certainly full PPR makes it that much clearer to me. I'm going Breece and Devontae. I don't know if either of you guys feel any different.
What do you think,
you can make the argument for Pacheco, like if it's like you lose the pick where he was drafted last year, if there's some sort of like reduced cost associated with it, but straight up the pick's easily Breece Hall and Devontae Adams for me. And yeah, go check out what we did on Monday. If you want to hear us talk about why we think Devontae Adams is a good pick, there is plenty of information and discussion there. But just in a vacuum, the Breece Hall and Devontae Adams are the pretty easy picks for me, especially in full PPR.
Yeah, do comment in, Chris, and let us know if there is a penalty, though, because it is a good point. Like, if you got Pacheco last year, you probably got him around 9, 10. So if it's round 10 Pacheco versus round, 2, no penalty.
No
she already
penalty,
says no penalty. Yeah.
No penalty. Keep any 2. Thanks, guys.
Okay,
Thank
perfect.
you.
So, yeah, go Breece, go Devontae.
For sure.
Right. Just like I believe I saw you got the guide too, Kristen, so thank you so much for that. But as you know, I really preached if you can get an anchor running back and an anchor receiver within those first 2 to 3 rounds, you're in great shape, and you're starting with that right away. That's a great platform to launch your championship season here, Kristen. So thank you so much. Really, really appreciate the generous support here of your guys.
All right, let's throw running backs out there.
Absolutely. I'll start us off. Jaylen Wright, this is one that I do feel very, very convicted in. I am a huge, huge fan of this player. If you're looking for this year's Devon Achane, why not look at pretty much the very similar profile of player, speedy back, sneaky power to him, in the exact same location where we saw that type of profile thrive. Now, I know he's going to likely require somebody to get hurt to ultimately realize the ceiling, but we're talking about a 32-year-old Mostert, and Devon Achane could not stay on the field last year. I'm not in that Achane's certainly injury prone. He's locked up, going to miss time quite yet from one season. You have to be concerned with that smaller size here that could be in play. Either way, there's 2 paths, 2 runways for Jaylen Wright to get into this lineup and do some damage. And if and when that happens, I think it could be a very similar impact to what we saw from Achane. I know that this guy is speedy. McDaniels, nobody uses speed any better than him. And we saw last year with Mostert and Devon Achane, running back 3 and running back 4 in points per game last year. Right? Talking about speed, 4.38 40, 98th percentile, 9.82 RAS score, ranks 37th of 1,903 running backs all time. 99th percentile in that sense too. And you look at the 40-yard dash. I forget who did this, but they timed out Devon Achane's first 5 yards and also Jaylen Wright's. And Wright had more get up. Now he's a little bit bigger, so ultimately Achane beat him with a faster time. But in terms of just like raw acceleration, Wright actually got to his speed faster than Devon Achane. Like, that's just how crazy this guy's speed is. When he finds a crease just like Devon Achane, he is absolutely gone, which is perfect in a McDaniel scheme that gives you space better than any others, whether that is the wide zone scheme attack, whether that is as a pass catcher in the screen game. McDaniel's a wizard. He does this to perfection. So you're already seeing it in Camp 2, all the reports where Wright is thriving, Wright's doing amazing, and then you see it in the preseason games. First game, 10 carries, 55 yards, and a score. Preseason week 3, 7 carries, 36 yards, 4 catches for 41 yards. He is just the single highest upside handcuff in fantasy. You could maybe list a couple more, Tyler Algier, Jordan Mason now. There's certainly guys I like as sleeper running backs too. But to me, it's just such a clear cut, like speed, McDaniel's system, and 2 potential outs to being a clear focal part. And McDaniels himself said this is a competition every single week. So there is a very small chance, but there is a chance that Wright is just like comes in, rips a 90-yard touchdown, and McDaniel's like, nope, I'm not keeping you off the field. Maybe he doesn't even need an injury. So huge, huge fan. A guy that I do not want to leave a single draft without, even if you're waiting for that upside to materialize. Of all the, like, there's so many good handcuffs. I don't think anyone has a ceiling quite as high, though, if it plays out the right way as Jaylen Wright myself.
So Jaylen Wright was also my pre-podcast pick. Just so you know, those were the only 2 we had together. It's not like I'm piggybacking on you every time. But my logic was similar, which was just like I love the Miami running back spot. Mostert definitely has an injury history. I mean, I know he was great last year. And, I know you said you're not paranoid about Achane getting hurt or whatever, but I'm apprehensive. I'm nervous. I know you like to shoot for the stars. And man, shooting for the stars with that guy is where it's at. But if you told me he was going to miss half a season, I wouldn't be just crazy shocked either. Also, Mike
if
McDaniel,
he misses half a season, truth, Jaylen Wright's going to win leagues. Like, there's literally
I
in my mind.
I agree with you. And also, you talked about Mike McDaniel being like a wizard or whatever. I'll tell you what he is. He's a pimp. Have you seen that guy this year?
Those new pictures?
Yeah.
Oh, baby, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, come on. And the Dolphins, just right there, that's probably worth a couple fantasy points a game.
Easily.
I also you didn't mention Mike McDaniel, the quotes he's recently been saying, like talking about we'll basically use as many running backs as we see fit, and we'll get whoever on the field is gonna make us win. And he like there's some standalone value there, and I mean it's probably not enough to really hit your roster if all three of these guys are rotating in and out, but and the other one there is if there's a situation where Mostert's the one who goes down, and I mean, we know the injury-plagued career that Mostert has been through. I mean, he had, I don't remember if he had an IR stint last year, but he missed a good number of games. He missed a chunk. And if it's Achane and Wright on the field, I mean, Wright's 210 pounds. He's got 35 pounds on Achane. He's going to be the one getting the goal line looks. So that's just another just big positive thing for Wright in terms of his path to returning massive value if and when someone gets hurt. So yeah, I have a bunch of this guy in drafts. We were grabbing him since the early preseason, or before the preseason rather, and we've seen him come up throughout the preseason. So it's exciting that we've got this guy, and he is going to hopefully win some leagues this year.
Yeah,
I think we're all in agreement. Love it. All right, who you got, Mo?
So my first one is Jaleel McLaughlin. This is another one who has been a pretty popular sleeper pick throughout the offseason. I mean, maybe it's popular to me just because we've been in the nitty-gritty drafting best ball for months now. But if Jaleel McLaughlin's name is not on your radar, he should be now. Samaje Perine was just cut by the Denver Broncos, and we had been speculating this for a long time, but this all but locks in Jaleel McLaughlin to be the primary receiving back for Sean Payton's offense. And you heard, if you listen to our best ball shows, you heard us spout off about the value of Sean Payton's running backs for fantasy at length. We've talked about it week in and week out, month and a half, last 2 months. But Sean Payton absolutely feeds his running backs in the passing game, and that's exactly what Jaleel McLaughlin is going to be doing for this offense. He's going to be passing catches. So Sean Payton has been a head coach for 17 seasons in the NFL, and in 12 of those seasons, his running back room has ranked top 2 in fantasy points scored. So just cumulative between all the running backs, fantasy point scoring, and that's because he uses them just ridiculously in the passing game. This stats courtesy of JJ Zacharyson, just a crazy find from him. Since 2011, of the top 17 seasons in terms of running back target share, Sean Payton offenses account for 8 of them. So he is just absolutely peppering his running backs in the passing game. Last year, the Denver Broncos ranked first in running back target share. So we've seen that this hasn't changed in his move from New Orleans to Denver. And I expect this to keep up in 2024 with Jaleel McLaughlin being that primary pass catching back. He was used in a limited capacity last year, but he surely produced when he was given the opportunity. So the sample size was small, but so we can't look into it too heavily. We know the guys' efficiencies regress as their sample size increases. But last season, among running backs with at least 25 targets, Jaleel McLaughlin ranked first in targets per route run and third in yards per route run. And then as a rusher, he wasn't too shabby either. Among running backs with at least 70 carries, he ranked fourth in missed tackles forced per attempt, 13th in explosive rush rate, third in yards after contact per attempt, and second in yards per carry. So a really small sample size once again, but I mean, this guy's got the juice. This guy's going to have a big role in 2024. Now that we know that Samaje Perine's out of the building, we saw him rotate almost in a 50-50 split with Javonte Williams in the final preseason game with Bo Nix under center with the starters. And I don't expect it to be a full 50-50 split with Williams in the regular season, but they like what they have in this guy. He is going to be the 1B in this backfield and play a big role in the offense, particularly as a passer. So I expect to see a lot of targets go his way. Jaleel McLaughlin to be on the field for passing downs and just soak up all of that value in PPR leagues. I just love him as a flyer in leagues where you're getting rewarded for receptions.
Yeah, I like that too. Wolf, what do you think?
I mean, we're talking about a guy, and this is a kind of fun trivia fact. The all-time NCAA all-division career rushing yardage leader had a career 8,166 rush yards over his time. multiple 2,000 rushing yard seasons. And I know that doesn't necessarily play into the argument of how good he's going to be as a pass catcher, which I fully buy. The Sean Payton narrative is great, but like it's not like this guy can't run the ball. 2,400 yards and 2,300 yards as a freshman and sophomore. Yes, it was D2, but they transferred up to D1 and still ended up putting a 1,588-yard, 13 touchdown season, in addition to 300 yards and 2 touchdowns through the air as well over there at Youngstown State. So like, it's not, again, small school. It is small school, so it's not like it was against the Big Ten or anything of that nature. But ultimately, it's a guy that has just produced anytime he's been given the chance. I love these like kind of undrafted free agents. Sean Payton does too, that force their way. You have to keep me on the roster. Not only has he been kept on the roster, he's been so good they released Samaje Perine, who's also a damn solid back himself, in my opinion. Also a pretty good sleeper. Now he's with the Chiefs as well, if you want to think about sleeper running backs. But I think this is a great call. It's such a fertile system for especially pass-catching running backs, and Mo proved very well with those stats that Jalen McLaughlin could be up there with the best of them in that next little Darren Sproles-style role. I love it. I think it's phenomenal.
I may or may not have drafted Darren Sproles on multiple occasions in my fantasy career. So that comp is something I love. Yeah, he was a lot of fun. All right, we're going to get into wide receivers. You'd love Jaleel McLaughlin then too, Truth, because he's like he is that smaller size guy, but sneaky power to him. Like if they just hand it off at the goal line, he's sneaky, can just pound right in, get like hides behind his blockers. There's a lot of Sproles to not quite as explosive, I would say, Jaleel McLaughlin, but similar receiving talent, similar way of getting behind his blockers. I'm a huge fan. I think it's sometimes you guys bring up guys and I'm like, man, that person, I don't even know who that is. This guy's totally on my radar. I love him. I've been all about him since last year. I'm a big fan. We're about to get into wide receivers. We're moving along at a pretty good clip, but look, we got like 300 people watching right now, which is pretty awesome. You guys could give us a like or a subscribe or share this, anything like that would help. We'd get even more people here, and we are driving hard to 4,000 subscribers on YouTube. We'd love it if you could help us out. Help us get there. With that said, let's move on to wide receivers.
Not quite true. We got a couple more running backs here.
We got a couple more running backs to go. My bad. Ray Davis. And spoiler alert here, David Campanelli's blowing up the comments saying that Ray Davis is a must draft. So
it looks like great minds think alike. Great to see you, Campanelli, at the show here. But yeah, Jaylen Wright, Ray Davis, 2 guys you love, 2 guys I love as well. Just a general note too, Mo's about to give another rookie he likes. It wasn't lauded as like the best rookie running back class, but man, these guys landed in just perfect spots that even if they're halfway decent, and I think they are, I think it's an underrated class, we're going to get a lot of sneaky value out of these rookies. That weird smog of this being such a bad class has hung over them, I think, far too long, and it's ultimately driving down their ADPs in redraft. And I've had 2 drafts so far. I have at least 3 rookie running backs on my bench in both of those. And yeah, if one of them doesn't pan out, 2 of them don't pan out, you cut them, you pick somebody else up. But I really feel great about where these guys landed. And Ray Davis is certainly one of those guys. You know that when we're targeting these late sleepers, you love to have handcuffs with benefits, as we call them. Sure, handcuffs great. If the starter goes down, you have that massive contingency upside. Well, of course we have that with Ray Davis. If something happens to Cook, you're now the lead back for a Josh Allen offense. I mean, come on. The Bills are going to definitely be one of the top 10 scoring teams in the league, and he could potentially be the lead back should disaster strike there. But I don't think we need an injury for Davis to even have some usability in those bye weeks, in those times you need a flex crunch, because I think he could definitely be the number 1 goal line guy. And I honestly think there's a chance that he takes over as maybe a 50-50 rusher here if he continues to thrive, as we've heard all camp. Big play, 60-yard touchdown run from Davis, all this good stuff. And then you see him in action in the preseason, and 8 carries, 58 yards, 7.2 yards per carry, 40 of those yards coming after contact, 5 missed tackles forced on 8 carries. I mean, I know it's a small sample size. I know it's the preseason. But that's exactly what we love about Ray Davis, a bowling ball with 3-down skill sets that never goes down on first contact, that can just break every tackle. It has sneaky speed for the size. I know our guy Duck, Kentucky guy, is in love with Ray Davis. And regardless of whether we get that injury or not to James Cook, of course, we're never hoping for it. But even if we don't, you look at Latavius Murray, a corpse last year. He was top 12 at inside the 5 carries with 12 of them. Davis is a monster at the stripe. That 220-pound but short and stocky frame is just perfect for pounding in and converting on the red zone. He was a master of that in college. I imagine he's going to be just as good at the pros. And so ultimately, with Cook just handling 51% of the rush attempts last year, we know Josh Allen's going to be in there for a nice slice as well. But I could definitely see Ray Davis carving out a nice little standalone rushing role, certainly at the stripe. So you get that TD upside along with the handcuff with benefits. I just love the player too. And of course, the story doesn't get any better in terms of, what he's overcome in his life. It's somebody that you love to root for. And I know that's not why we should draft our fantasy picks, but when you have a guy that you want to see succeed, no matter whether he's on your team or not, why not have him on your roster as well? You can root for him even extra hard in that sense too. So love Ray Davis. Think he's a phenomenal guy going after 160 right now.
Look, you kind of downplayed the importance of having someone that you want to pull for. I mean, that's not nothing. That matters to me. Like there's guys I won't draft just because I hate them personally. And, so if you can get behind somebody, all the better, so I'm all for that. You talk about value holes all the time in the guide. You're referencing the big, the Cincinnati running back value hole that somebody's going to fill. And I mean, obviously Buffalo, similar thing. Like, and if this guy's got a chance to be the guy, then he's definitely worth a look.
I just wanted to emphasize just how little they want to give James Cook the ball at the goal line. I mean, you heard me talk about this. Damian Harris played 6 games for the Bills last year before his season ended. He had 1 fewer goal line carry than James Cook last year. They do not give this man the ball at the goal line. Harris had 3, Cook had 4 goal line carries last year. They just don't do it. Like you said, Ray Davis, just the epitome of a bowling ball running back. He is going to get all those touches, in my opinion. And I do think the 50-50 split may be a bit pushing it in terms of like his ability to eat into Cook's rushing workload, at least in between the 20s. But yeah, I'm really bullish on this guy. Massive contingent value, and can be like a bye-week plug-in. Just hope that he scores. I mean, we all think that even with the lost weapons, this Buffalo offense is going to still be strong. So should be provided with ample scoring opportunities to hit your lineup in a pinch if he ends up falling into the end zone for a short score. But I'll move on to my rookie running back of choice, and that is Bucky Irving. And I mean, the real thesis of this bet is just I'm looking for a way to bet against bad running backs, and I think Rachaad White is exactly that. He's a strong receiver, but as a rusher, he is just a total zero, just towards the bottom of the barrel in just about every single efficiency metric that we care about as a rusher. Missed tackles forced per attempt, explosive rush rate, rush yards over expectation. He's just a bottom feeder in all of those rushing efficiency metrics. And so I'm just looking to bet against that guy. And then we've got Bucky Irving, who immediately slots in as the RB2 in this Tampa Bay offense after being selected in the 3rd round in this year's draft. Chase Edmonds starting the season on IR, and the other guy in the backfield, Sean Tucker, just bad. I mean, they tried him out last year. I mean, there's just nothing else to say other than this is not a guy who is going to be challenging for touches. But Irving, he offers a pretty unique profile, highly productive last year at Oregon. One of the league leaders in scrimmage, or one of the leaders in all of the FBS in scrimmage yards, 1,600 total yards and 13 total touchdowns. He actually led all of college football in receptions from the running back position. So he's got a 3-down skill set, a pretty intriguing profile in my opinion. And all of the reports are indicating that he fits very well, within Liam Cohen's rushing scheme. We had Albert Breer, a guy we've referenced, taking stops by all the training camps. And he noted how Cohen's coming over from Sean McVay and the Los Angeles Rams and installing a similar rushing attack. And Breer went on to say that Irving kind of reminds him of what Kyron Williams does for the Rams. He just hits the hole hard and quickly, and is just kind of that one cut, get up and go type of back that fits Cohen's rushing scheme really well. But outside of the fit, I mean, it just in terms of I'm betting on this because he is the clear RB2, and the guy in front of him is suspect at best. I mean, White's value was completely driven by his dominating the touches and the workload given to him by Dave Canales, who is no longer with the team, over to Carolina now. So a new regime who has no loyalty to Rachaad White, and he has shown that he is just not a good running back outside of his pass catching ability. Bucky Irving can compete with Rachaad White in terms of his pass catching ability and could very well fit this offense in terms of his ability as a rusher. So I'm looking to bet against Rachaad White. I like Bucky Irving as a talent, and he has already cemented himself as the second option on this depth chart. So he is one of those guys I'm throwing a dart at late in drafts.
So I thought your case is really compelling, and betting against bad running backs is in my opinion, a great strategy to find somebody around this level. Also, just as an aside, just to demonstrate to the viewers the difference between me and these two experts who I'm facilitating this conversation between. While your argument for Bucky Irving was excellent, if you had asked me what I thought of Bucky Irving, I would have assumed you were just trying to make me look stupid because you had just made a person up. Because I've never heard of him before this very moment. So thank you for the lesson. It just sounds like a fake
Oregon standout, dude. He was sick over there in college.
I don't watch much college.
Fair enough. I mean, if you did, you would have seen a guy that forced a missed tackle on 17.2% of his collegiate rushes.
Okay.
Only that was better than Bijan Robinson and Jahmyr Gibbs since 2022. He had the most catches in the FBS running backs with 56 of them as well. And he had a horrible combine, dreadful. He's a smaller guy, had a horrible 40 time, but ultimately he did have the fourth fastest miles per hour time on the field last year. So I think that is significantly overblown. This guy is a baller, as you mentioned, just great fit for this blocking scheme behind a running back that was bottom 3 in terms of rushing success rate, expected what he got, what is expected versus what he got. I think it's a great, compelling case because there's a path to just taking over the more of the rushing work. And then, of course, if something happened to Rachaad White, this is a true 3-down skill set and a guy that can absolutely thrive. I think it's a great call, Mo.
Is this the guy that ran like the 4.6 40?
Yeah. Yeah, it was gross. He's like 195, 200 pounds. And he chunked. It was bad. It was ugly.
So I did know of him. I just didn't remember the name. And you have to admit, Bucky Irving sounds like a made-up name.
I'll tell you the truth. I tweeted out like my top 5 favorite sleeper running backs about 2 weeks ago, and Bucky was on the list, and I got like 2 separate comments that Google's Bucky Irving's name. So you're not alone here. There are people on Twitter that were like, who the hell is this guy talking about right now?
All right. Well, so as it turns out, I've kind of peripherally heard of the guy. But anyway, thank you for that. I feel like I learned a lot about him right now. So now we're actually at the point in the pod where I should have been asking for likes and subscriptions, because now we really are moving on to wide receivers. Now there's even more than 300 people in the room. So now you got even less excuse to give us one. So give us a like. Give us a subscribe, whatever you want to do. Help us get where we're trying to go.
Yeah, we're 100 away from 4K. We're making that climb. It'd be incredible. A huge goal to hit it ahead of the season. That'd be tough. But, hey, I mean, 300 of you here. I know a lot of you guys on Twitter. And if you want to help make our day, just come on over, hit that sub button, whether you want to stay on Twitter to watch it or not. It does help us continue to climb through the algorithm. But thank you again so much for being here as we now transition to wide receivers.
All right, let's get into it. Wide receivers, are we going to start with Mo this time?
Yeah, I think Mo, given one that is a fringe, we talked about not trying to be too obvious, but you called it. The guy is going at 120 right now, which does remind you that, it might not be obvious to us best ball bros who've been taking this guy in the 60s, 70s in drafts. Brian Thomas is going outside the top 120 right now, though, in redrafts. So I think it's a phenomenal – you wouldn't even think of him as a sleeper unless you actually go and check the ADP, because he is going that late in redrafts. So, Mo, I'm glad you put him on here because it's obvious to us, but clearly not to maybe the masses right now. And I think you can definitely sing Brian Thomas's praises here. What a stud this guy is.
Yeah, this is one that's just the dichotomy between the people like us who have been drafting since March and the people who are just now getting back into things. I mean, like you said, it wouldn't shock me if some people in your home league have just straight up never heard of this guy when his name comes off the board. But boy, should you be woke to Brian Thomas Jr. This man is a monster. We're talking about a guy who is 6'3", 210 pounds, but runs a 4.3 40. I mean, he's drawing comps to skinny DK Metcalf, just in terms of what he can do in terms of taking the top off of defense and just absolutely dominating the vertical plane of the field. And he put it on display last season. You mentioned it earlier, but led the nation with 17 receiving touchdowns, 11 receptions of 30-plus yards last season. I mean, we're talking about a guy who's a quarter of his catches went for touchdowns last year. It was just like absolutely ridiculous what this guy did at LSU last year. And he kind of goes overlooked because we had the big three. We had Malik Neighbors, Marvin Harrison Jr., and Rome Odunze. But this guy is really not that far behind. I mean, I guess he kind of is. That's like those three are a different echelon of receivers. But I mean, this guy was the fourth wide receiver taken in this draft class, and I think he can really do some damage. And he's stepping into a perfect opportunity to make a mark in his rookie season. He joins the Jacksonville Jaguars. Like I mentioned, they spent a first-round pick on him. And the opportunity is there because Calvin Ridley is gone. And whether you liked it or not, Calvin Ridley, I did not like it. He was used in that vertical role. He was running a ton of boundary routes as the X receiver and just getting downfield. But that's what Brian Thomas does really well. Calvin Ridley, last season, he had 28 deep targets. So 28 targets that were at least 20 yards down the field, which was the 8th most in the NFL last year. And Trevor Lawrence, he loves to push the ball downfield. He ranked 5th in deep target rate. It was 13.3% of his throws went at least 20 yards downfield last year. So the willingness of Lawrence to push the ball down the field and Brian Thomas Jr.'s ability to get downfield and blow by defensive backs and just defenders in general. I mean, we're marrying opportunity and offensive philosophy and just the quarterback's mentality perfectly here. And not only is the opportunity there, he is going to seize that opportunity. We saw it in the preseason. Brian Thomas Jr. was out there consistently with the starters. He was on the field in 3 wide receiver sets. He was on the field in 2 wide receiver sets. He is going to be a full-time starter for this offense from the jump, unlike what we see from a lot of rookie wide receivers who are kind of eased into the offense and don't really get going until the back half of the season. Brian Thomas Jr. is going to have the opportunity to make a mark from day one, from when week 1 kicks off. And I'm just the prospect profile is tantalizing. The opportunity within the offense is there. I'm just, as you might be able to tell from the Trevor Lawrence call out, I'm all over this Jags offense being one of the more slept on offenses in the NFL this year. I just can't get enough of Brian Thomas Jr. And the fact that he's available at the end of round 10 is just egregious to me.
I can't agree more with you, Mo. I think it's ridiculous. And even on DraftKings Best Ball, he was going in round 10 for so long, and now he's crept up here. Every single week that he played on the preseason, 38-yard catch, 25-yard catch, you're seeing those flashes. I know, again, we don't want to overreact to that, but it's just so nuts to me. You mentioned Malik Neighbors in that upper echelon of receivers. They were teammates, and Thomas still managed to put up nearly 1,200 yards and 17 touchdowns with one of the best wide receiver prospects to come out in decades. So the fact that he could put that up with such a target hog next to him it speaks volumes about what he could potentially do. And he had a quiet camp for a little while, and then Kirk went down, and it has just been the star of camp ever since. In the joint practices with the Bucs, every single day, the Pewter Report, this was the Bucs tweeting about him, not like, so you're like, no, this isn't just the Jags hyping him up. Brian Thomas remains a problem for our secondary. He's unguardable. He just caught another 20-yard touchdown over Jamal Dean, who tried to respect his speed and got ultimately burned. He and Trevor Lawrence are in complete sync. So when the other team is just like daily tweeting about you, how good you are, and how much you're roasting their secondary, you got to take note. And we're seeing it in those quick glimpses when he's on the field is absolutely happening. You mentioned Ridley gone, 40 red zone targets, 22 end zone looks, both top 3, 17 touchdown score, could definitely make some damage with those. Huge fan of Brian Thomas. Anywhere, I like to take him in round 9 just because I don't want to risk somebody in my league knowing about him. And even then, he's on my big board.
Yeah, take him in round 8. Like, take him 30 picks ahead of ADP. Who cares?
Just make sure you get him.
This is
the only reason I would say not in round 8 is because like you can typically get Rome Odunze in round 8 and then just take Brian Thomas in round 9 right after him. Or Xavier Worthy I've been getting in round 8 in all my life. I've got him in back-to-back drafts.
Yeah, if he's approaching the top of the queue, like do not be afraid to reach over a round to get this guy. I mean, he is awesome and just an explosive play waiting to happen with a quarterback who can make it happen for him. So, yeah, this is one of my favorite guys to draft this year.
Nothing to add on my end except I love the prospect of a skinny DK. That is just like that's just awesome. Because I'm a DK truther. So anyway.
Yeah, just like I said, if you like that idea, like, of course we love DK because he's humongous and jacked, but this is like a more fluid DK. Like, he is just the way he gets in and out and slithers through the defense without, like, he's awesome. You're gonna love this guy, Truth. Brian Thomas is the man. My guy is far less exciting as a physical specimen, but I'm following the vacated volume here. It worked out well with us with the Texans last year. We had Nico and Tank Dell as highlighted features. 2 years ago, the Detroit Lions led the NFL in vacated volume. Well, Amon-Ra St. Brown, as a rookie, comes in and just absolutely smashes. Typically, this can be a huge precursor to have such available targets up for grabs. And then when they're coming from a guy like Josh Allen, 3,353 air yards, most in the league. 73.3% of their air yards are vacated. That's most in the league. 317 total targets are now up for grabs. That's second in the league. And the 86.3% wide receiver target share up for grabs is also the most in the league. So we know that this pie is up for grabs. And sure, it might not be quite as aerial friendly. Maybe Joe Brady, who when he took over was a little more run friendly, liked to target his running backs. But still, somebody's going to have to step up as a pass catcher. Sure, Dalton Kincaid's a favorite for many to be that. And honestly, if I had to place a bet today, it might be on Kincaid as well, but you're talking round 5 or 6. There's still going to be some value. You look at Joe Brady. Yeah, I talked about him being more run happy, but with again, Teddy Bridgewater, talking about not good sleeper calls. I know we were in on him just a few seasons ago with Joe Brady. That was the reason we liked him, was we thought this guy was going to be a great play caller. Now, Bridgewater didn't do much in terms of his own fantasy value, yet he still sustained 3 top 25 wide receivers. Robbie Anderson was the wide receiver 20. Curtis Samuel was the wide receiver 23. And somehow DJ Moore was the worst of these 3, was the wide receiver 25. So 3 top 25 wide receivers with Teddy Bridgewater. You're telling me that Josh Allen can't sustain any top 25 receivers? All 3 of the guys are outside the top 40 wide receivers right now. Shakir's the cheapest of the 3 right now. And I think he honestly might be the best bet to take over that role because he has, one, the holdover factor. He already has that pre-baked in chemistry. Over the last 10 games of the Bills season last year, Shakir actually was better than Stephon Diggs. He outproduced him in fantasy, in yardage, and he had 42 fewer targets in doing so, which is just absolutely nuts. In the playoffs, where your season's on the line, he became Josh Allen's top targeted wide receiver in those spans. He ultimately had 3 catches, 31 yards, and a touchdown the first week, and then 9 targets, 7 catches, 44 yards, and another touchdown in the next week against the Chiefs there. And ultimately, in training camp, they've been just connecting. The beat writer saying it looks like a true superstar is emerging here. They're making these type of tight window throws where like it's blanketed coverage, and it requires complete faith and trust. And Josh Allen himself said, I have a lot of faith in him. He's a smart playmaker, plays faster than you think, a big catch radius for a smaller guy like him. I know he's going to go up and get the balls I give to him. And so, yeah, I like Curtis Samuel, intriguing, but he suffered that plantar fasciitis injury. He probably would have been my favorite bet of these guys, but those are the type of foot things, especially for a shifty guy that can linger. So give me Shakir, the holdover wide receiver here, going right now in the 120s. I have him right inside my top 100 as the top target for Josh Allen, other than maybe Dalton Kincaid. And again, who says that it couldn't be Shakir? So I think this is a great situation that we typically you bet on vacated volume, and that's without quarterbacks at the level of Josh Allen. Somebody's going to emerge big here. Why not take the cheapest of it? Take all 3 if you want. I won't even fault you if you want to take all of Keon Coleman, Curtis Samuel, and Khalil Shakir. But if you're going to take one of them, make it the cheapest of them. That I also think is the safest bet to really do some damage here.
Yeah, I will fault you if you take all 3 of them. I think that would make a great way to be miserable all the time. But I hear your vacated targets. My pick is actually one that follows similar logic, but different team. But Mo, you've got a guy, you went with someone who was going around 120 before, and now you're shooting for someone who's going quite a bit later.
Just another egregious price from the draft market. I mean, this guy can be scooped up in the 170s in redraft. And Wolf and I have been talking about how we've been doing these best ball drafts all the time. I mean, this guy made a push for inside the top 100 at a certain point, and he has been dealing with injuries recently that's kept him off the field throughout the preseason, and he's come back down. But 170. I mean, I will be scooping him up every single time at that price tag. This is just another guy who's just another tantalizing downfield burner. I mean, he was an undrafted free agent, so he wasn't invited to the combine and doesn't really have any like true official 40-yard times. But I mean, this guy is considered to be one of the fastest players in the NFL, and he showed us exactly that last year. He had 7 receptions of at least 40 yards, which was the third most of any receiver last year. And he had 4 touchdowns that were at least 30 yards in length. And that was just in a part-time role. Now we're getting a guy who projects to be a full-time player for this Chiefs offense. We didn't get that confirmation in his preseason usage.
Right? By the way, for the audio listeners, we're talking about Rashid Shaheed here. I know some people are probably like, who are we hyping up here? And then you said Chiefs. I want to make sure everybody knows. We're talking about Rashid Shaheed here.
So, Rashid Shaheed. So he's going to have the opportunity to be a full-time player this year. Like I mentioned, we didn't really get confirmation of that in the preseason because he did not appear in any preseason games due to the injury. But the quotes out of training camp from Shaheed himself just saying, there'll be times I won't come off the field, so he's got to be prepared. He's got to be physically ready as well as mentally ready. So we're expecting this guy to take on the full-time wide receiver 2 role in this offense, and that's just something he's never had in his career. We saw it here and there last year due to injuries, and when he was given a full-time opportunity, he succeeded. He had 6 games last year where he cleared an 80% route participation, and he hit 15 fantasy points at a minimum in 3 of those games, so half of them. So that's pretty exciting for me, especially for where you can get this guy in the 170s of your drafts. So just the talent and the opportunity is going to be there. And then I just think in general, we're going to see better usage for these wide receivers in this offense. We move on from dusty old Harold Carmichael, who comes from the Sean Payton coaching tree. His offense was simply archaic. Last season, and consistently throughout his time as the offensive coordinator, the Saints offense ranked bottom of the barrel in terms of their usage of motion and play action. And those are just kind of the key indicators in terms of whether or not an offense is modernizing and using the concepts that we like to see out of the modern and high-end offenses. But we're starting to see those changes under Clint Kubiak. There was a lot of speculation this offseason just in terms of this offense taking steps, the wide receivers getting easier and better looks and just all-around better usage. And we saw that in the preseason. In the preseason, 66% of the snaps with Derek Carr on the field utilized some sort of pre-snap motion. So it's going to be a modern offense. It's going to be a more well-rounded offense for these wide receivers. And I'm really bullish on what Rashid Shaheed is as a talent. He's not just a downfield burner. I believe he is a legitimately talented receiver who can make an impact as a wide receiver 2 on this offense. And he's finally going to have the opportunity to be a full-time guy. And I think he takes that opportunity and runs away with it.
Yeah, I mean, who they had? Bub Means, like a fake name there. Bub Means, the old receiver they drafted. Yeah, exactly. You think Bucky Irving's fake? It'll get into Bub Means territory, bud. But ultimately, I do love the Kubiak call out too. I think it's going to be huge. There's rumblings that maybe Shaheed's like their version of. I know he's not the same build or style of Debo, but in terms of this versatility, moving him around, getting him those yak opportunities. He was kind of that one-trick deep ball pony and did great in that role last year for all the reasons you cited. But if you get this guy a few more layup opportunities, that the team clearly felt good enough to not make any moves. Michael Thomas is now gone, opening up tons of looks over the intermediate range of the field. I'm all in. I think it's a great price. And I think, he had those injuries in camp. So, you want to make sure he's fully healthy. But I think that's the reason. Had he been healthy in camp, I bet you we would be getting the buzz of like, this is Kubiak's new Debo. This guy is moving all over the place, a chess piece. These run after the catch opportunities are just getting behind the defense every single day. Type of reports would be coming out, and this guy would be going in the 100s, the 120s. So I think it ultimately would be a blessing in disguise, those injuries, in terms of his price going right, like you said right now, 170. There's no reason to not take a stab, see what happens. I think he's going to be one of those most added waiver wire guys after week 1. Get ahead of it and just get him on your roster now.
The fact that this guy might be a waiver wire guy is a joke.
Yeah.
This guy has to be rostered in every single league. If your league's thin enough that he might not get drafted, take him with your last pick. Just get this guy on your roster however you can.
Absolutely.
Strong words from Mo. Last receiver on the list, Wolf?
an ADP of 254. And in my guide, I have a couple guys going in the 300s if you want to get real deep. But Jalen Tolbert for the Cowboys is clearly going undrafted largely in leagues right now. And I think he is going to, again, be one of those guys that everyone's scrambling to pick up when he has in week one, 9 targets from Dak Prescott, hauls and a nice touchdown. Everyone's going to realize, what were we thinking? The wide receiver 3 in an offense that was number 1 in passing yards, number 1 in total touchdowns, number 1 in total points, number 1 in total plays last year. This is an explosive offense, whether you like it or not. I know no one loves Mike McCarthy, but Dak Prescott and him really turned it on in that second half of the year. And with Michael Gallup gone, no real additions added other than like a 6th-round rookie, Brian Flournoy, who hasn't done anything in camp. Tolbert has the clear runway to be the, at least, at worst, I'd say, number 3 receiver in this attack. And I think there's a chance he could leapfrog Brandon Cooks, who I do like at his prices. I'm not against Brandon Cooks, but there's a world that Tolbert is as good as what these camp hype have been looking like. So I'll start in the spring, and I've been drafting this guy since the spring. When I saw these, Prescott challenged Tolbert to be to say, they had a conversation. What do you want your role to be? And Prescott said he was a little underwhelmed and told Tolbert, your role is to go out there and show you can be a true number 1 at minimum. When we have a guy like CeeDee Lamb, be that number 2 for us. And after that, the Breakfast Club, we love that narrative with Cooper Kupp and Stafford. Well, how about the backyard practice narrative? Every single day they practiced. Literally, they said every single day. Anytime I called and wanted to throw, he was there, said Prescott. Tolbert, hey, let's go run routes at Dak's house. Love it. Love it. Just let's go to Dak's house and run some routes. That's how he spent the entire offseason working on whatever route of the day they would call it, and they would just work and run the same route, 100 times in the backyard with Dak. And then Dak, after it, this chemistry building session, said every year there's a guy who I feel I spend the most time with in the offseason, and he goes on and has a huge year. I don't want to put all that type of pressure on Tolbert, but we spent a lot of time together. Last year it was CeeDee Lamb. It's usually a young guy, and it's going to be Tolbert this offseason. And so, hey, again, not a CeeDee Lamb type of breakout, not predicting that. It's always a little rare for a guy that was so unproductive through 2 seasons to then come on and truly explode. But I know you've played fantasy long enough to remember that it used to be the 3-year wide receiver breakout, not the rookie breakouts, for a little while it was 3, forever it was 3 years. Then it was the 2-year breakout. And now, of course, we've got these freaks coming in the league that, Jamar Chase is the wide receiver 3 from his rookie season, whatever it might be. But it used to be like, who's going to be that year 3 breakout? Maybe, just maybe, we still have that here, right? Like, I think there's a real good chance. Everybody else has seen it too. Mike McCarthy saying everything's improved. Brian Schottenheimer saying I've seen a player that's matured and ready for that next opportunity. And even the beat writers say it every day. There's a highlight reel play for this guy. So I love it. A big role in an emerging talent in an excellent offensive environment, going undrafted. Wide receiver 3 in the best passing attack of last year, maybe the wide receiver 2 if he jumps over Brandon Cooks. And should ever, if anything ever happened to CeeDee Lamb. And I hate to say it, but like when these players do hold out and come in late, like there's a little bit of a track record of something getting pulled early on. And again, not wishing for that. I think this offense would take a huge hit as a whole. I don't want Tolbert to have to be the number 1. I don't think he'd succeed in that role, but there is the world where if CeeDee Lamb's gone, somebody's going to have to step up. And if not, with CeeDee Lamb drawing so much attention, I really think there's a world where Tolbert has a nice 700, 800 yards, 9, 10 touchdowns. Like something crazy could really happen for this guy. The way the hype has been, the connection he has with Dak right now, going undrafted. So I think he's an absolute steal. And everyone's going to want him in the waiver wire after the first week.
I was literally talking to another older gentleman around my age today that when we were discussing fantasy football when we started playing, which, believe it or not, was like 1991 or 2. And we were just kind of talking about how you have to keep track of these guys coming out now, because remember when rookies just didn't play?
Yeah.
It wasn't even like they didn't break out. They just didn't play. They were like, nah, you're going to carry my luggage for a year. I don't care how good you are. You're going to pay your dues. And then at some point someone was like, that's insane. Like look at Randy Moss or something. Can you imagine if they just didn't play him for a couple of years and then decided to roll him out just on principle? Yeah, it's crazy. The 3rd-year breakout used to be a real thing, and it was kind of stupid that it was, because a lot of times you were just flushing 1 or 2 years down the toilet for no reason.
Yeah.
But I like your case for Tolbert.
I'm old enough to remember when Jamar Chase was going to be a bust because he couldn't see the football and it was too big for his hands.
Oh yeah, the lights.
There's some skepticism because of he just hasn't been good to this point. But yeah, just in terms of just betting on the Dallas offense, I mean, why not just scoop up the free piece of the offense? And yeah, I was waiting for you to dish out the Breakfast Boys narrative or the Breakfast Club narrative. There's some weight to it. And but like I said, just wanting to be betting on an offense that we expect to be one of the better offenses in the NFL. And some people are just saying that it's going to regress significantly. I mean, the offensive pieces outside of the line, I mean, I know line play is huge and could have an impact, but outside the line, I mean, it's really the same cast of characters that we saw lead the number one offense in the NFL last year. You swap out Michael Gallup for Tolbert as that wide receiver 3. And if he can, Brandon Cooks is on his last legs. So if he can prove early on that he's got some juice, and then Dak develops some trust, and then they build a relationship, and he can make an impact. Taking over as the number 2 option is not out of the range of outcomes, and that we saw that with Cooks last year lead to some big games.
Yeah, they actually were graded. Everybody keeps bringing up the line. It's maybe they're not the number 3 line or number 4 line like they've been for so long, but Brandon Thorne for ETR graded them as a top 10 line. I think PFF, they're right 11 or 12. So sure, maybe they take a step back, but I think people are expecting this to go from a top 5 line to number 32, the way you see it getting talked about. This is not going to be, they added a first round talent to it too, and not a guarantee to pan out, but a lot of people are spelling doomsday for this line too early.
People will find any reason for the Cowboys to fail. Yeah, they will paint any picture, try to draw up any narrative for why the Cowboys are not going to succeed.
And they'll do that themselves, in terms of real life. When the playoffs hit, they'll make sure to fail and crap their own pants. But fantasy-wise, in the regular season, they have been. Every year under Dak, they've been an explosive offense, no matter who's calling the plays, no matter what the shape of the line is, no matter who the weapons are. It's going to be a good offense. It might not be the number 1 offense like last year. I could almost guarantee it's going to be top 10. Unless
four straight years with a healthy Dak, 4 straight years being a top 10 offense. I mean, CeeDee Lamb's just getting better. The weapons aren't really changing that heavily. I mean, I don't know what they can paint whatever picture they want. This is going to be a good offense.
What year was it the last time the Cowboys won a playoff game?
Don't care. I stopped caring about the Cowboys in week 17.
Yeah. I don't care either. I only care because I think it's funny. I don't care.
Do you know the answer? I don't know it off the top of my head.
Well, I just know it's been a really long time.
Yeah.
Wasn't it 2 years ago?
Did they win a game 2 years ago?
Yeah, I don't think so.
I feel pretty confident that's wrong, but my brain is not the steel trap it used to be, so I tend to believe MOH on this stuff. But no, I feel like it's been a while.
I think it's a long time.
All right, so I do want to bring up a guy, and anytime I think
they won in 2023 against the Buccaneers.
That was
that doesn't even. I guess it counts,
that was almost a full year ago. Anyway, right. Well, that's why I asked these questions, because I guess I legitimately didn't know the answer. So anytime I have a guy that I think might be a target in one of these things, and neither one of you guys brings him up, I automatically think, okay, that guy's career ended, and I just didn't hear about it. And you're going to make me look ridiculous. But there is a guy that I want to bring up that I think I have a decent case for. Just you talk about vacated opportunities with the Bills, and I think it's a legit case. The Bills had 173 vacated targets this year. Well, the Chargers had 250. They lost everybody. They lost Mike Williams. They lost Keenan Allen. They lost Everett. They lost Austin Eckler. And the last man standing is Josh Palmer. And there's no other receiver they have on their team that's even caught a pass. No, certainly no other starter that's even caught a pass from Justin Herbert before. He started 10 or 11 games in his career and has put up decent fantasy numbers when he has. I think he averages 12 or 13 fantasy points a game when he has started. He's clearly going to start. He's the only guy that can even pretend to have any sort of rapport with Herbert. Now, even the lowest volume passing teams in the league, I feel like, passed over 500 times. So the ball is going to be thrown. I know they're going to run it a lot too. Herbert, obviously, we're all kind of as a country down on him where we were as far as when he was coming into the league and all that stuff. But given where Palmer is going, and given just the amount of targets available, using your same Bills logic, it's significantly more than that. Even it's the most in the NFL, like by far. What do you think about somebody like him? I feel like he's definitely worth a stab. He's going late.
I think it's a really good point, Truth, for a couple reasons. Entering the preseason, I would have said that's Ladd. He's going to be the number one, the rookie who came in, who I do still think is a good pick. He's going ahead of Palmer. I think he probably should go ahead of Palmer just because there is the chance that he emerges the main guy. But then you look at preseason usage. Ladd was not playing in two wide receiver sets. Palmer was the clear every down starter snap guy. He is that pre-established rapport with Justin Herbert. I think is even more important when Herbert gets hurt in camp and now did not have time to continue to grow that rapport with McConkey, with the other guys. So even if McConkey does end up emerging and blowing up, somebody else is still going to be valuable. It's Justin Herbert. Even if this is a Greg Roman run heavy attack, there will be valuable weapons here. And I think Harbaugh and Roman are smart enough to not have to play the same exact Raven style offense when you have a cannon armed guy, a top 5 real life quarterback like Justin Herbert. I don't know why I haven't been more in on Palmer, honestly. I think it's a great argument. And certainly the way the preseason's gone, you wouldn't think a quarterback injury would help a receiver, but it honestly might, in Palmer's case, being that main standover. I think that could end up playing into it. I don't know. Well, I feel like you've liked Palmer before, Mo. It's not the first time. It was early in the preseason. You were talking about him quite a bit, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah. I mean, like you said, it's really just it's a bet on opportunity. He's locked in as the number one guy. And I'm fine to take him. He like we've talked about with some of these wide receivers, it's a much more palatable price in these home leagues, in these redraft leagues, than what we get over on Underdog. I mean, there are kickers going ahead of Josh Palmer in redraft ADP. He's sandwiched between Evan McPherson and Jake Moody. It's insane. There's 5 defenses go ahead of Josh Palmer. So I mean, why not? We're not entirely sure that he is actually good. The small sample size has been promising in terms of just a total output and just his counting stats. But yeah, the opportunity is there. The offense has been stripped bare. Some of the sharper guys in the industry, namely ETR, are ahead of ADP on Josh Palmer. So always good to be in concurrence with people you think are pretty sharp. So I think that the bet is sound. It's not because it's not like a talent based thing. You don't think Josh Palmer is a world beater. It's opportunity. You don't love making those bets, but when you can take it at pick 150 after people have already taken their defense and their kicker, I mean, why not? I mean, the upside's there with the quarterback talent and the overall opportunity. So go right ahead. I'll not shy away from Josh Palmer at his current price. I think if you just kind of if you've taken some upside swings and you think you just need some targets, you need some looks, you need routes on that roster, go ahead. He's going to provide a stable floor. Maybe Ladd McConkey makes a push to chip away at Palmer's role as the season progresses. But if you need a stable floor guy to pair with some upside swings earlier in the draft, be my guest and take Josh Palmer. I think that's a fine pick.
I think it's a reasonable thing that you said where we're not totally sure whether he's good or not, although we've seen some flashes. But yeah. I think that one thing is for sure, we're gonna get to. He's gonna have a legitimate, probably extended chance to prove it one way or another.
100%.
And that's where I was coming from on this.
I mean, okay. Wolf's a DJ Shark defender, but is DJ Shark going to be challenging this guy for routes and targets? I don't think so.
No, I don't think so. And I'm not a DJ Chark defender. And, the Wolf and I often see eye to eye, but not on that particular player.
I'd rather have Josh Palmer, for the record, than DJ Chark by a while. It's more so DJ Chark's like a round 20 guy in best ball. So I'll take a last-minute stab on him getting a deep ball or two from Justin Herbert in a handful of weeks. He's also been hurt and banged up. That case has gone down. I like the call, Truth. I really do. With Palmer. And I wish I had drafted more of him in best ball season because I really don't have much, but it makes a lot of sense.
I appreciate it because, like I said at the outset, anytime I've come up with a guy and then neither of you guys names him again and again, I'm kind of wincing and cringing every time, and I'm frantically Google searching, like, did he break his back? Like something's going on. And so actually, no, he seems to be healthy, and he seems to be currently the wide receiver one on the Chargers. So we'll see how that plays out. With that said, let's move on to tight ends and wrap this thing up because I know you each got one of these. We love talking about this guy. This is the Wolves guy, right?
It's my guy, Taysom Hill.
Of course. I mean, I feel like he's infuriating, but it's kind of like watching a car crash. You kind of can't look away.
Exactly. It's not like I love having him on an NFL field. I think it's weird that he continues to get as used as he is. It comes at the expense of Kamara and Olave and all these guys that could otherwise be fantasy monsters. But Taysom Hill is a volume magnet and especially a touchdown magnet. And if you're punting tight end, I really think you should go elite tight end those first 4 or 5 rounds, maybe a Jake Ferguson or an Evan Ingram if you miss out. But if you do get scrambling, you think the run's not going to happen later, and suddenly you're on the back end and you do not have one of those top 7 to 8 tight ends, why not punt with Taysom Hill? He's the tight end 7 and tight end 12 in points per game the past 2 seasons, second in touchdowns across the tight end position in back-to-back seasons. He's been a top 12 tight end in 50% of his games across the past 2 seasons. That includes a 34.3 and 22.4 spike as well. Again, when you're punting tight end at that point, you're hoping for a touchdown or bust. Why not get the guy that's been the number 2 touchdown scorer in back-to-back seasons and also has huge spike week upside in there? And what if this volatility does improve? A lot of people thinking, okay, new offense, they're going to get rid of this guy and move on and use their actual weapons in a more interesting way. No, so far this preseason, he's lining up at running back, tight end, fullback, quarterback, receiver.
Of course he is.
He's all over the place. And you look at even not just in training camp practices, but in the actual preseason games, he's been on with the first team in 20 of 28 snaps, 71%. 2 were out wide, 2 were as the slot receiver, 8 were at tight end, and 9 were in the backfield, and 4 of those were as the fullback. So, like as the report said, he has been a true move-it-all-around place. And Dennis Allen, I think, hates literally every single human being except Taysom Hill. He could not rave about this guy anymore. And literally the last week, 2 days ago, how many football players have you guys seen that are like Taysom? I can't read this one without laughing, but I'm going to try my best.
Go.
How many football players have you guys seen that are like Taysom Hill, that do all the different things he does? It's certainly obviously very unique. And I'm glad we have that skill set on our team that we can hopefully continue to be creative with how we want to utilize him. And really, honestly, hopefully we can get maybe even a little bit more out of him than what we've been able to do this point. I mean, again, like if Kendre Miller, your 3rd round, second year running back, wants to kick him in the face, it sounds like, every time he talks about him. But Taysom Hill, my good Lord, drop the pants for Dennis Allen and then let him do his thing, given the way that he talks about him. But again, Kendre Miller, speaking of the guy, he can't stay healthy. It wouldn't shock me at all if like Hill is like actually their backup running back. I know Jamal Williams is on the roster. He is horrible. And I really do think, Hill is kind of fun to talk about. Like, why is this guy getting so much usage? He's actually not a bad running back. Like, if they actually just decided, let's make him our runner, he's actually pretty good. He is explosive. He sheds tackles, and he has as many goal line carries the past 2 seasons, 30, as Alvin Kamara. So ultimately, maybe it balances out. The volatility isn't quite as crazy, but you're still getting those nut spike weeks. Definitely going to have some decent touchdowns. Maybe even the number 2 touchdown score again among tight ends is in his range of outcomes, given that he's going nowhere. Why not? Tight end 18, tight end 7 and 12 the past 2 years. I think it's if I've done nothing at the position, what better than that? That's exactly what you want is touchdown or bust. This guy hits him at a higher rate than really a lot of the elite guys, honestly, the touchdowns this guy scores.
How many touchdowns has he had over the past 2 years? Do you know? I know he's been way up at the top like both seasons, right? I mean, but
he's been number 2 in back-to-back years. I don't know if I have the exact number of touchdowns. I can look it up while Mo gets.
But I mean, he's the ultimate. Unless I'm remembering this wrong, I know that you guys have the data there, but like he's either blows up or he does nothing. And that's why he just drives me so crazy. I've had him plenty of times. I've owned plenty of Taysom Hill, and sometimes he's made me really happy. And a lot of the times I'm just so furious that I have him. But it's like you said, if you're not going to get one of the top guys, and then you're going to have a guy, he could get you like 32 this week just randomly. Why not go for him? Which, by the way, would be a great shirt. Just Taysom Hill. Why not?
Yeah.
Wear that shirt. Why not? Why not Taysom Hill?
What if it's like, and then the other thing is there was a couple of years ago where like he got a few starts at quarterback. I mean, probably not happening. They have Spencer Rattler, a rookie on the roster, but if he doesn't feel ready and something happens to Carr, there's no more Jameis Winston here. Maybe you're getting a starting quarterback at tight end. I remember when that happened, and it was
did that
this is the number one tight end every single week. Like until he was a 22 point a week tight end as a quarterback that you could slot in there. Like that is not like it's certainly within the range of outcomes in terms of touchdowns. 2 receiving touchdowns last year, 7 rushing touchdowns, so 9 total touchdowns.
9 touchdowns. Year. That's ridiculous.
He's had 9 and 7 touchdowns in back-to-back years. So for a tight end,
I'll just say that I don't have the list, but if you said a guy scored 16 touchdowns in the past 2 years, I'll bet you could have a list as long as my arm of these like first round guys, second round guys that you're building teams around that haven't scored that many touchdowns. I mean, it's just ridiculous. And so I will just close before we go to Mo, either to talk about Taysom Hill some more because we love to do that, or to close it out with his guy. And I will just say, why not? Why not Taysom?
I even before you throw it to Mo, because you're talking, and this is kind of goes back to our bus show.
Go ahead.
Chris Olave, 9 combined touchdowns the last 2 seasons. Taysom Hill,
half as many.
Yeah, it says exactly half as many, pretty much, as Taysom Hill, his teammate, across the last 2 years. I'll have to make sure to tweet that one out. No one's gonna really appreciate that.
I will.
I love it though. Yeah, Taysom Hill. Exactly. 7 more touchdowns over the last 2 years than his teammate Chris Olave, 2nd round pick. That's all you need to know.
Yeah.
That's
I can get behind the why not narrative.
Why not?
Yeah, I mean, you're going to get either 0.5 points or you're going to get somewhere in the range of 11. It's not ideal, but across a full season,
that's the tight end position, though. Like that's what I'm getting at is once you're outside the top. I don't want to be there. I've preached all offseason. It should be an elite tight end. If you miss on those guys, I love Evan Ingram and Jake Ferguson. Like you really should not get to Taysom Hill range, but there's going to be a time at a draft this offseason where you're just like, crap, I didn't take a guy. That's all those guys. Hunter Henry. Yeah. No, we're going to talk about Noah Fant right now. Maybe he steadies out a little bit this year, but I also do think there's a chance in this more diverse like role with Kubiak. Like, what if the floor does get a little bit better? There is a chance that it like stabilizes just a little bit here. I really do think so.
There's going to be a game that you play Noah Fant and he gets 2.6 fantasy points, and Taysom Hill's sitting on waivers and he scores 24.
Exactly.
It's going to happen.
To round out the Taysom Hill talk, I do have to give some pushback on the Taysom Hill Saints RB2. This guy is 34. I mean, this guy is not going to be handling carries in between the 20s, no matter who goes down with injury. He is 34 years old. Yeah, wow. This is a middle-aged man.
I thought he was like 24.
No, this guy is not going to be handling carries in between the 20s, no matter who is injured on the Saints roster. That's a little much, but
that changes everything. Shit.
Yeah, a significant red zone role, sure. I can get behind that, but the Taysom Hill RB2 is a bit of a stretch. But Noah Fant is like another guy here as we round out 5 minutes on Taysom Hill. But Noah Fant, it's really once you get down to this range of tight ends, it's like you're flinging stuff at the wall. You go with Taysom Hill and just hope he finds the end zone. And I agree, it's a strong bet because in this range, like most of the guys who emerge are the guys who just end up just running well on touchdowns for the year. Like those are the guys who make the jump from the low end tight end twos to the serviceable tight end ones. And Taysom Hill has a history of doing so, running well on touchdowns. That is, so I do think it's a strong bet if you punt tight end. But I think another option is Noah Fant. This is really just a bet on athleticism and routes. Noah Fant, we've seen tight end one seasons before. His 2 years in Denver, he was the tight end 11 and the tight end 12 in terms of points per game. So he's been a fantasy starter in years past, and people he was kind of, if you think back a couple of off seasons, he was one of those people who the fantasy community was propping up as the sleeper breakout tight end of the future, because I mean he was producing at a starter level pretty quickly into his career, and tight end is still in this day and age one of those positions where you don't see high levels of production right out of the gates, and he was doing so that got people excited. And another reason people got really excited was that athleticism that I mentioned earlier. I mean, this guy scored a 9.88 RAS score, so just a highly athletic guy, great size speed combo. So just one thing that we love to bet on at the tight end position is those high end RAS guys. But last year and really just since he has been in Seattle, he just has been a stone cold zero in terms of his fantasy production, just not worth anything at all. But I really just don't think that's an indictment on him as a player. It's just because he was in a full-blown tight end by committee situation in Seattle these last couple of years. They were rotating Fant, Colby Parkinson, and Will Dissly in that tight end room last year. And if you go take a look at the Seattle Seahawks roster this year, you will notice that Will Dissly and Colby Parkinson are no longer with the team. They are Parkinson is in the NFC West still with the Rams, and Dissly is with the Chargers. So they're still in close proximity, but no longer in Seattle. And because of this tight end by committee, this rotation type of deal last year, Fant was only running a route on 56.3% of dropbacks last year. And I think that number is going to shoot up. Where we saw in the preseason, the Seahawks run a ton of 11 personnel. So if you're not familiar with that, that means that there's only one tight end on the field. And if you look at the Seahawks depth chart, that guy is going to be Fant. He hasn't been healthy these last couple of weeks, but when he gets back, fully expect Fant to take over that tight end one role. And in this Ryan Grubb offense, like I said, a lot of 11 personnel, 3 wide receiver sets featuring only one tight end on the field. So I expect that route participation to take a significant jump up. I expect him to be a full-time player, unlike what he has been in these last couple of years. And when he has been a full-time player, we've seen him produce at the level of a fantasy starter. So I don't see why he can't make that jump. And like you said, with the Geno Smith bet, I want to make just directional bets on this passing attack improving as a whole. Noah Fant may be the number 4 guy on the target totem pole behind the 3 wide receivers, but I do still think that Grubb's offense will provide some value for the tight end to have some production. And if he runs well on touchdowns and can have or approach in the range of 700 yards as a receiver, I do think that he can be a viable starter for fantasy purposes. But mainly this is just a bet on him just being a full-time player, unlike what he's been in these last couple of years, and then his athleticism and what Grubb will bring to this passing attack.
Wolf, rebuttal?
I don't hate the attack. I mean, the dude is 249 pounds and ran a 4.5 140. Like, that is just absurd. 96th percentile rank in every single workout metric. He's a specimen. There's no doubt about it. And like, specimens are fun to bet on, but again, the highest yield so far is tight end 13. If you got tight end 13 as price, that would certainly be a win. But the path with DK and Lockett and JSN, here's the deal. If it ultimately that Noah Fant is a valuable late round sleeper, then the Geno pick is also going to be a phenomenal one, because like this offense just went completely ham. And it could. I really do think like Ryan Grubb could potentially do that. So I don't think it's a bad call to ever bet on a freakish athlete that was not getting a full-time role and should be this year. I just think even in that full-time role, he's behind some pretty heavy mouths. And you actually brought up a name just as a small last toss in too, in Colby Parkinson. I actually prefer Colby Parkinson myself, who goes over to the Rams, gets an absolute bag, $22.5 million, $15.5 million guaranteed, top 5 among tight ends from Sean McVay. And anytime McVay identifies an interdivision player that he wants to go out and get and will pay whatever it takes to go get him, when it's a mind like McVay, I do want to pay attention. And I know Dennis Allen was an interesting guy, but in this preseason, Allen played, and ultimately they did not put Parkinson at all. And McVay is very clear, like he will not play anyone he considers a clear-cut starter in the preseason. This guy's 6'7", already was adding real value throughout camp, impressing with using that size and catch radius. According to the beat writers, his best 2 days. And it was like, you got a pinpoint guy like Matthew Stafford, a guy that also ranked 8th out of 83 tight ends in run blocking grades. So like, will never leave the field, opens up the play action game as well to be out there, and decent speed for his size as well. It kind of reminds me of Jake Ferguson, like a good overall offense, maybe not this freakish specimen, but going to probably get some volume. Obviously big mouths to feed in Puka and Kupp. But after that, more so as a touchdown bet too, with a Matthew Stafford type of pinpoint accuracy. I'm a fan of Parkinson as a last round stab. Plus, he's got like the best flow you've ever seen. So, obviously that determines all fantasy success as well. We've cited before too that Higbee Sun Run. Remember that in 2019, the number 1 tight end for those last 5 weeks of the season. I don't think we'll ever see that again. But it's not like McVay has never used a tight end really, really well, especially in the red zone. So hey, I think there's worse stabs you can make in these really deep drafts than Colby Parkinson.
I will say I did not know the Saints head coach was playing tight end for the Rams. You said Dennis Allen instead of Davis Allen.
Yeah.
But I get the point. Yeah, it's a touchdowns thing. Dude's a mammoth. Hopefully, just a red zone target. And like you said, I mean, none of us are. I will not be leaving a redraft league without someone in the top 8. I'm not going to force anything, but like there's just so many guys available in so many different spots that I will not be punting tight end in a redraft league this year. It makes more. It's like it's okay to do in best ball, but there's just so many options, and you can even extend that to the top 10. I just simply will not be in a situation where I have to pick up any or draft any of these guys. Maybe an injury forces me to later in the season, but as we highlighted in our tight end show like a month and a half ago, you should not be leaving your drafts punting tight end this year.
No.
When you said you didn't realize the Saints head coach was playing tight end for the Rams, I didn't hear the entire thing and didn't process it soon enough, and I was like, is he talking about Taysom Hill? Is Taysom Hill also coaching a little bit?
It all comes back to Taysom Hill.
Well, I mean, I honestly, I've been distracted ever since that section. Just kind of once you told me it was 34, which I'm pretty sure you're wrong about. But once you told me it was 34, I was just sitting here thinking about leaning on him for 10, 12 carries a game out of the backfield, just really feeding him the rock.
The 34-year-old man who's going to get 12 touches a game.
Don't go the A-gap, Mo. I'd like to see you go running head of steam at Taysom Hill. You would put any one of us 10 feet into the dirt.
Really pound it between the tackles with that guy. No, we should.
That 34-year-old man's a beast.
But before your time on at Roto Street Journal, a big staple, and I feel like we should bring this back maybe on the game day recaps. A big staple for the Wolf and Me were hypotheticals, with various NFL players. And what would it take for you to let him do this to you? I wouldn't mind seeing you go headlong into Taysom Hill, even though he's middle-aged.
I would break 60% of the bones in my body.
And a bunch of the good ones too.
Yeah, too many of the good ones. I can't afford that.
All right, so we acknowledge, even though he's old, and he's probably not going to be the RB2 for the Saints, he could destroy all of us.
Yeah,
anyway.
All right, 33-year-old man would really humble us quick. But we do have some questions and comments in the mailbags. Over 400 of you with us live. I think we've hit a new record for the offseason right now in terms of live concurrent viewers. Would love your support with a thumbs up, a like, a share, a retweet as we get into the mailbag. But definitely, whether you're watching on Twitter, YouTube, Facebook, get your questions on in. We know it's draft season. We know there's a lot to consider and weigh, keepers and all that. Happy to answer it as we get through here. But hey, if even just a quarter of you guys came and hit that subscribe button, we'd have over 4,000 people heading into the season. We'd hit our goal. It would mean the world if you consider just popping over to YouTube real quick, hitting that sub, and helping us bump up those numbers for the algorithm. But either way, thank you so much for being here. And again, Kristen, thank you again so much for that super chat. Great to see you back, a usual regular. Love to see you guys coming back for the streams here. Let's dive on in.
Rana Shaw, what's up, guys? What's on the food menu next week for Chiefs Ravens?
What a huge kickoff, huh? I'm so excited for that. I haven't even planned out the menu. I'm not going to lie, but I think this was one we didn't come back to, Mo. We talked about coming back to the food questions of Chrono, like what's our best favorite game day snack? So I don't want to put it off and then not come back to it. I would say it's got to be wings. To me, like a good plate of wings is just like the best for a game. What about you guys? What do
you think, Mo?
I have the diet of a diabetic, so I'm not the best person to ask here. But my buddies and I, we do often go for wings on Thursday night at a spot by us. But just like on that Sunday, like have a little bit of everything type of deal. I always bring buffalo chicken dip to the table. That might be a bit of a Midwest thing. I don't know if you all have it out there on the East Coast, but it's a Sunday staple when me and my buddies get together. So that's my go-to.
Wolf, are you a boneless wing or a bone wing guy?
Nah, bone in. You got to have the bone in.
It depends. It depends on how focused I'm feeling, because, like, if I got my full capacity, like the bone in's fine. But if I've had like a lot, give me the boneless ones, just because it takes me a lot. I don't need to be thinking about anything else.
That's true on a game. Like, it was 7 hours of commercial-free football. If you just want to be popping in like popcorn chicken, I
do like to pop it in. Yeah,
I get it. That's a fair argument too. But if all things considered, if I could have bone in or bone out, it's bone in 10 out of 10. I guess 9 out of 10. Red zone on the TV. Scott Hansen wins. I'll go boneless for that situation only.
Yeah, I think I'll go with you on that. Krana said, I asked last week. I didn't accept the deal. Now I got another offer. PPR, White, MHJ, and Waddle for Walker, Adams, and Smith, or Higgins. Remember, I said I have Tyreek already. The app froze. I got Waddle. Yeesh.
Ooh, so it's Rashad. I'm guessing that's Rashad White, Marvin Harrison, and Waddle for Walker, Adams, and Smith or Higgins. I don't know. It's one of those things with like trades where, like, I think you might be getting the better end of this. I prefer Walker to White. I prefer Adams to Waddle. MHJ I do prefer, though, out of all the receivers. And whenever I'm like sitting there and just don't feel like, boom, take the deal, like lock it in, I usually say stick with what you got. But again, when you have Waddle and Tyreek, I totally get why like a neutral trade probably is appetizing at the same time. It's not a bad offer by any means. I don't know. I guess maybe I'd say take this, because I think in full PPR as well, like the gap between Adams and MHJ is very close. Waddle being banged up right now, plus you already have Tyreek. I might pull this trigger. It is close, though. It's close enough that I'm like, maybe you just don't shake up the locker room. But it's so early that if you're going to shake up the locker room, do it now. And I think it's not an unfair deal. I say take it. I don't know. What do you guys think?
I pass on this one.
I also pass. Wolf, I honestly think that's what you think too. You just like talked yourself into it.
Yeah. But the Waddle and Tyreek thing, like I get why Chrono wants to get out of that. It's great in best ball. It's great in like the right redraft week or best ball. It's good in like best ball and also DFS when you double stack that. But like, I don't love it in redraft, because on those weeks where they face the Ravens and get completely shut down, like your team's going to lose. And in best ball, I have the weapons to cover that. I'm going to have the other scorers pop in. But I don't know. I don't love having Tyreek Hill and Waddle. So if I get a fair offer, I think I take it. And this seems like a fair offer. I guess.
That's fair. Yeah. I don't know. I wouldn't do it.
It's close, but hey, I guess the boys say that is a big one. Like, could you get like just Waddle, trade Waddle for Smith in a little piece or something like that? Maybe you just do Waddle for Smith and just like balance out the team and not have to move around so many pieces. I don't know. It's tricky. It's a tough one. And thank you again, Kristen, for that super chat. You already shouted out Campanelli. Yeah, great to see Campanelli back.
Must draft. I said this before, Ray Davis and Jaylen Wright, and you're in luck because we actually went deep into both of those guys.
Absolutely.
Who wants to know where's the sexiest man alive? CJ. That's what everybody wants to know.
I think he's working at Encore tonight. He has the night shift these days. So he's over at the casino doing some clientele. He had I don't even know if I'm allowed to share it on air, but some
here
football players from joint practices from the Eagles, some big names were in there. And one of them in particular was a very big loser in terms of his night at the casino. I guess he's got a problem with it, but yeah, I don't want to get CJ in trouble here. But yeah, he sees some celebrities roll through there all the time, which is great.
Is he like a blackjack dealer?
No, he does like customer like support, like client relations, like that. Like, if the Eagles roll in, he brings them to a room and like sets up the stuff and like, make sure like the big guys are having a good time.
I was hoping he was like a dealer or like a pit boss or something like that.
Yeah. Throwing Saquon Barkley out. Yeah, good one, CJ. Nice try here. Oh man. But yeah, Campanelli with a fair call out here for you, Truth.
I mean, it's fair. It's fair. I think that it's less on me not making it and more of an impressive flex, the fact that he did make it. Because I was right, just because, I can't be expected to live up to something like that. That was a real boss move by Campanelli. Respect him for it. And, hopefully I'll be able to make the trip one of these days.
You got it. If Campanelli can make the trip, you can. It was an awesome weekend. That was so fun to meet Campanelli. We went to the Bruins game. We had a great show at the brewery. Definitely had our fair share of drinks all together. It was awesome, Campanelli. You made the weekend so special by coming out and joining us in person, man. And hopefully you enjoyed a little slice of the North Shore out here. But that was so cool that you came out. And we got to get Truth. You got to meet Truth at some point.
Just remember, like, if you think Taysom Hill's old, I'm old.
Yeah.
It's tough for me to, like it hurts, just walking out the house to get in the car to, much less driving. I'm in constant pain. Omar F says Bub Means is a cool name, and I agree.
It's a cool name, but is he real? We still don't really know.
I don't know.
Imagine he catches like the first touchdown on like red zone and a shocker, a guy named Bud Means is Scott Hansen.
And then Hansen just goes, just kidding. I just made him up right now.
Yeah, exactly.
What about Jalen Naylor? No Hawk for most of the season and Osborne gone. What do you think?
I think he's a solid one, Omar. I actually haven't even added him to the guide yet, and I probably should. I've been sprinkling him at the end of best ball drafts later, just because I do believe in a Kevin O'Connell tech. Now, do I really believe, though, that Sam Darnold can sustain Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison and then Jalen Naylor to be viable enough in redraft? Probably not. No, I actually don't believe that. But could a speedster like Naylor spike for a few? I do think that O'Connell orchestrates such great mismatches and knows when to attack deep. And I do think that we could get a revival for Sam Darnold in some sense. I mean, again, the number one passing offense last year, even though Kirk Cousins was hurt for well over half the season, they had Jaron Hall and Nick Mullins and all these nobodies. I think Sam Darnold could do fine. And so I do think Naylor in best ball, well, you don't have to try to predict it, but there's no way in redraft you're ever like confident that I can put Jalen Naylor into my lineup. I see is if Addison gets like suspended longer than people think, and we get like a nice eight game run for Jalen Naylor as the number 2, maybe even then you're still feeling a little shaky, but like that could be a path.
Yeah. I don't even think he's getting drafted in like the deepest of redraft leagues. So someone to keep on the radar for sure, but I don't think he's a draft priority. Of note in best ball where you're drafting 240 players, but in your typical redraft league, I don't think this is going to be on anyone's radar other than the sickos, and you appear to be in that boat with us. So it's interesting because of the opportunity, but just like that's like a priority waiver wire week 1 pickup. Like see what he does, see what kind of role he has, and what he does in the first game, but probably not someone you're going to be drafting.
No.
Yeah, he's not a priority of mine. I think it's fair to say.
I love Jaws here. As we were talking about the why not Taysom Hill. Taysom Hill, the Mexican amusement park ride of tight ends. Probably a good comparison. Why not? Well, you could die or you could have the time of your life.
Right. We know the downside is obvious. The question is, like, do they have the same upside as Taysom Hill? And I don't know. It sounds like some of those rides are at least 34 years old.
Yeah, a lot more risk. Probably not quite the reward of a 3 touchdown day.
The
Mexican teacups.
Taysom Hill 32-point game.
Yeah.
Charlie says, here's a line for y'all. Over under 50 active NFL players who have scored more touchdowns than Taysom Hill. Wow.
That's a good over under. I would probably take the under 50.
I would too. And I don't feel great about it, but I think I'd probably go under. Like, because we just talked about how many he'd scored in the last 2 years, but he's scored plenty. And now, thanks to Mo, I know his career is a lot longer than I thought it was. So I'll bet it's under.
Yeah, just knowing how long he's consistently been punching touchdowns in, I would say under as well.
All right. Well, I hope Charlie tells us if we're right or not, because
let me know if you know Charlie. I don't know exactly how you find that out, but it'd be a fun little trivia fact.
Josh said 4 of those touchdowns came against my Seahawks a couple of years ago. Worse, I just dropped him in Dynasty. I remember that game.
Yeah, that was the 32-pointer I think we were referencing there. Oh, man, that one hurts, Jaws, just to rub it in.
More fantasy points this year. Carson Steele or Samaje Perine?
Oh, Samaje easily. Now it's Samaje there. I mean, Perine's good. Like, I know that how could you be so good and still not beat out 3 other running backs on the Broncos roster? I can get that argument. I understand it. But they got young guys in McLaughlin and Audric Estime and Javonte that they want to see. Like, they know what Perine is. They know what the ceiling is. The dude had the most yards per route run among running backs last year. He's a capable pass catcher. He's certainly good as a pass blocker. He knows how to pick up the blitz. I think he's going to play like a lightened version or maybe just the exact version of Jerick McKinnon. Definitely does hurt. I know we've talked a lot about Pacheco. If he's not getting that third down role, which you probably won't when you sign Samaje Perine, it hurts Pacheco. And I think Carson Steele is dust now. Maybe he plays fullback and pounds in 1 touchdown here or there. But Perine is going to be anything that anyone assumed Carson Steele might do. I think Perine's actually a really solid pick right now.
Carson Steele also sounds like a porn name.
Yeah. Have you seen what he looks like, Truth?
No.
Oh, so Google him because then you're going to like your comparison.
Okay. What does he? Okay.
I'm not even going to tell you what he looks like. Just Google Carson Steele. And you can already picture the porn title cover and all that.
You should read his Wikipedia page too. It's pretty wild. But on the Perine thing, the people out there who are worried about Perine destroying the Bengals backfield or the Cowboys backfield, they're turning around and saying oh, this doesn't impact Pacheco at all. It's well, which one is it going to be? Is this guy going to have a role as a third down guy and perhaps a pass catcher, or is it not? Make up your mind. And my mind is that it may not be the full McKinnon, as you said, but to some degree, this guy is going to play a third down role. He is a very strong pass protector and can do something as a receiver. But I mean, just in terms of how it affects Pacheco, I mean, no one's trying to prop up Perine as a legitimate fantasy pick, especially in redraft. But the biggest impact is how it affects Pacheco. And I think that impact is going to be legitimate. I mean, if he's not on the field for those third down snaps, it's not like don't draft Pacheco anymore, but you do have to knock down his expectations because those big expectations, a lot of them were built on his ability to take on that third down role.
I wouldn't call him a non-fantasy pick either. I think if he plays out that within a couple of weeks is the McKinnon role. McKinnon was very draftable as a handcuff with benefits that we keep talking about. Use him in a pinch, could be a touchdown guy. We know how good Andy Reid scores those receiving in the red zone for his running backs. Could be that. And then if something happens to Pacheco, I mean, we've seen Samaje Perine. You had him on the Bengals a while ago, and when Mixon was out, he had 2 30-point days in a 3-week span. He can be a complete an utter workhorse. So I think Perine. I just sent out a draft guide update 2 days ago. Not yesterday. I sent one last night. I'm gonna have to send a new one, and that's crazy that Samaje Perine is dictating that I have to rewrite my guide yet again. But he does. Like, he is that important because, one, he's going to be a good sleeper, I think, in his own right. And two, it does impact Pacheco enough that, like, I've written about Pacheco as a must get in the second round in your redraft in the late second. And I'm not going to bump him down too big. I still love Pacheco, but, like, a big reason we loved him was because McKinnon was gone and all that stuff was going to go to him. And if P. Ryan's just a bigger McKinnon, like, that could be a potentially even bigger thorn. I don't know. I'm a little worried about this signing for him for sure.
I just looked up Carson Steele. So first of all, love it. Second of all, are you talking, Mo? Are you talking about Crocky J?
Yeah, and like he's a juggler too and stuff. Like it's weird, man. He's a character.
If you found out he'd been in a couple films, like, you wouldn't be shocked. Like, I mean, he's obviously kind of a Renaissance man. He does a lot of stuff. He's an alligator named Crocky J. Wolf.
That's awesome. If you had to pay the bills in college for a couple weeks, hey, come on over here. Carson Steele will make you a title character in this film. I can see it. Yeah, you and Crocky J can do
double the money if you bring the alligator. Tom, who is the best receiver after AJ Brown and Puka are off the board?
It's a great question. I'm assuming, Tom, you're saying that Garrett Wilson's also off the board as well.
Let's assume that he is.
Oh, man. I want to say Marvin Harrison Jr. Certainly in best ball, I think that's the case with the back-weighted rookie production. And even if he starts slow, you're going to get him giving you his most valuable stats when it matters most. Drake London's in that conversation, like, with that offense. I really love Nico Collins. Like, I just think he's awesome. And I know he falls around 3. You know who I'm going to say, though? Especially with the uncertainty around Ayuk, I love Debo. Like, I think you're going to get something good out of Debo. Whether he is actually the best after these guys and finishes the season there, I don't know. But he's slim. He looks explosive. Like, if Ayuk held out, he'd be guaranteed better than the next best guy. And even if he doesn't, Ayuk's going to be slow to come up to speed. Potentially hasn't practiced all preseason. I feel like I might want to rank Debo after all these guys, after Brown and Puka are gone. What do you guys think?
Mo?
I was going to say Collins.
Love that one too.
Yeah, that's the easy one for me. I think
Devontae?
not easy, but I love me some Nico Collins, so I'm comfortable taking him there.
I love Nico. I'm a little worried the receiving core is a little crowded at this point, and I feel like it might be like playing whack-a-mole. I hope that that's not true because I really do like Nico, and I hope he blows up. Also, obviously, there's some guys you named before this guy that make more sense. But if I'm looking at a crowd of receivers that come after there, I'm at least making eye contact across the bar with Cooper Kupp.
I think it's fair. I really do.
I'm at least going to let the guy know I'm at least a little interested.
A passing glance at minimum is certainly warranted to Cooper Kupp.
You're gonna hold a glass up and nod at him, something like that.
A quick little cheers. Yeah.
Would I take him above Devontae Adams, Debo? No, probably not. But I'm interested.
I think you could justify that. We're talking about the number one wide receiver in points per game in back-to-back years before the injuries started to strike, and apparently looks as healthy as he's ever looked. There's a conversation. I think he kind of in DraftKings best ball is going right around like 14, 15, 16 overall right now. I pulled up my rankings because, again, I like to answer these questions without looking at the rankings just to see like what my gut says. I do have it as Marvin Harrison, Devontae, Debo, London, Nico. Again, like Nico came to mind pretty early. Like I feel like I have to bump him up. Debo was the final one I settled on. But Marvin is so like this is like literally the best receiver prospect to come in decades. And Malik Davis right there with him. I know it's like the second time I've said it like this season. That's how good these two are. And he's going right to Kyler Murray, 150 targets probably. I don't know that he's going to start slow. Like I don't think he does. I think he just eats. So I think I'm going to say Marvin Harrison is my actual official answer. I think he's just going to be a monster from day one with Kyler. So I'm going to go Marvin Harrison. But man, like it's a great question. That's what we could do a whole show on like what
receiver is
go
the
after.
best on the board. I can tell you this:
Yeah.
Drake London will not be on my team before Cooper Kupp. I don't care what you say.
I don't hate it. He's definitely a polarizing one. I know. I want to honestly bump Kupp ahead. I mean, we haven't even put a passing glance at Mike Evans, like an absolute animal, wide receiver 4 last year, and I don't see a ton of reason why he couldn't repeat with Baker back. I mean, there's yeah. The thing is with all these guys, like, and especially in redraft, I guess the reason why I don't even like think about them too much is 1 or 2 of those guys always seems to fall to round 3. So, like, I'd rather take punt returner Kyron Williams, which is just absolutely maddening that he's returning punts this year. Or, Saquon if he falls. Like, I feel like it's a good range to get a running back because one of these guys, rather than having to make the decision yourself, like, just get your running back and let one of them fall down to you is how I would feel.
All right, I should really get out of here in the next couple minutes. We got a couple more.
If you got to run, by all means. We only have a handful.
Yeah, we got like 4 more things to do. He's 49th. We're talking about Taysom Hill. He scored 38 touchdowns.
Yeah, that's crazy. So we got it. We knew it was going to be close. Debo, tied with Debo. Wow, that puts things into perspective for you.
Taysom got CD and Puka. Thoughts? I think you got 2 really, really good players, man.
I think Jaws summed it up. Nice start. Like,
100%.
That's a great start. I had one best ball. I've done that so far on DK, and I was like, wow.
That's a good receiving core you got, dude.
Yeah, that's it. Not much more to say, but nice start. Like, that's phenomenal, Gator.
Last but not least, Bulldog 0921, one of our favorites. What's up, guys? Just watch Hayden and Josh's wide receiver rankings videos. They got Waddle, Nico, Kupp, and both San Francisco receivers as 9, 10, 11, and 12, respectively. Very interesting. Okay.
Yeah, so Waddle
is a guy that we weren't throwing around when we were arguing about that a minute ago.
And I don't know that he belongs there. I have him at wide receiver 17, certainly not wide receiver 9.
9 seems high, man.
9 seems really high. I get the contingent upside. If something happens to Hill, like, I'd be ranking him as probably a top 5 receiver, but Hill doesn't miss time. He's an absolute Iron Man. And Waddle himself he's still not practicing right now. He's been out of camp for some decent time here.
I would rather have all those guys over Waddle. And I like Waddle, but
yeah, the Waddle made a glass narrative is fine. And it's concerning that he isn't practicing, but this man was elite on a per route perspective, like target earning, production yards per route run, like top 10 in both metrics. It's just such a concentrated offense. I don't think 9 is probably too aggressive, but I do think that this guy, like his best ball price tag should translate to redraft. He should be a 2-3 turn pick.
He should be a second round pick. I don't think 2-3 turn. I don't think a redraft. I don't know.
This guy is elite. This offense can support 2 top 12 guys. I think it is very much capable. 9 is too aggressive, but I will be clicking him in the beginning of round 3, basically every time in redraft still.
All right.
Will you with Nico's there?
That is a question I'll have to wrestle with on my own.
No, don't do it.
Do you like him?
Don't do it.
You like him more than? Would you take him over Kupp?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
I would not. I'd go Kupp.
I wouldn't.
Our boomer is showing here, Truth. I'm with you. I'm going Kupp easily in that debate.
We'll see after the season. We'll revisit.
This could be a good draft. Yeah, we could put a little bet on this one.
Kupp over Waddle.
I would go Kupp for sure. Because here's how I look at it, Mo. It's like if we're betting on 2 native glass receivers right now, I'll take the one that's been the best receiver in all of fantasy ever, instead of like a guy that needs Tyreek Hill to get hurt to even sniff the best receiver of his entire year, never mind of all time. Like, I like Waddle fine. I love him in redraft at round 4. Like, I think that is a phenomenal pick. I don't know how it's happening. I love it. He's been my wide receiver too in a couple of my early drafts here. Great. But it's 2-3 turn is my number 1 guy. No. If I'm banking on a hamstring issue, give me Kupp. Like, give me Kupp all day.
We'll see. Yeah, Waddle was more efficient last season, earned targets at a higher rate than Kupp. Kupp is declining, Waddle is ascending. You can bet on the 31-year-old who showed signs of decline. And I'm going to do it. I'm just going to bet on Waddle ahead of him.
Yeah. All right.
Mo's like, I'm a big iPhone guy, and we're like, no, give me the rotary phone that plugs into the wall.
I love Cooper Kupp as much as anyone. I'm just not going to take him ahead of Jaylen Waddle.
Fair enough.
We'll come back to this.
Water bet on the. So what exactly is the water bet? I know it's like what Field Yates and Berry did, right? Like what?
I have no idea what that is.
Yeah, so I'm not agreeing to it until I know what it is.
I remember it was something in terms of like chugging water or something. I don't remember exactly what it is either, but I remember it was like a bit that Berry and Field Yates, I think, did. And it was like a kind of harmless bet. It wasn't drink boiling water and throw up all over the screen with blood. Like it's nothing like that.
I think when it comes to these disagreements between us, I just think being able to lord being correct over the other one for the next season is probably enough.
Yeah, Kyle Pitts, for example.
Sure. I was a year early. I wasn't wrong. I was a year early.
You're going to be wrong again. Man. Well, that does it, guys.
That does it. Well, almost 500 of you here. Awesome to see that. That means the fantasy is in the air. We'd love to see it. We're going to get to that regular season programming in just next week. I can't wait. The Thursday night game is going to be kicking off. Great stuff. Now, if you have your drafts coming up, I promise for $10, rotostreetjournal.com/draft guide. I poured out over 130 pages. My fantasy soul. I've got a ton of phenomenal feedback. A lot of people telling me next year you should charge $20 for this. And I might next year. I don't know. But it's been 10 all off season. I'm not going to jack the price up in the middle just because it's the time of the year. So, get it while you can. And everybody that I've talked to were like, I would pay $20 easily at minimum for this. And I had somebody write in, I haven't read 100 pages in 7 years. And I just read like all 100 word for word. So, hey, whatever that counts for. A lot of people just giving really, really nice praise and feedback. Of course, it matters if it helps you win. But last year, it helped a ton of people. And shared a ton of positive words. So check that out. If you don't want to do that, though, rotostreetjournal.com has tons and tons. That's the only paid content we do. Tons of other free content on the website. Previews of the guide scattered on out there. My rankings I'm going to be updating after this stream to reflect all this latest news of Samaje Perine, some big implications we were kind of talking through here as well. So check all that out on your way out. That thumbs up button. And we're pushing towards 4K subscribers. It would be so cool to be able to pull that off ahead of the season. So if you haven't already, hit the sub button. You enjoy what you're doing. You want to stay on for more content. We're going to have tons more preseason bold predictions coming at you tomorrow at 4:30 with Walter Picks. So that's another show to be on the lookout for. But we will be. I want to get at least one more best ball draft in before the season closes.
Sure.
Like we definitely we gotta get Truth in for a best ball draft. Ideally,
I'd like to see that with you guys. I'd like to do that.
So maybe we can find a time there. But yeah, tons of great content. Hit that sub, hit the bell so you know when we're going live. Thank you again so much. Always so great to see you guys. In a world full of fantasy sheep, be the wolf. Later, guys.
Later.